Good evening. We will begin our meeting. If you all join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, good evening. Welcome, everyone. Those of you here in person, those of you who are watching online, we have one of our board members not able to be here tonight, so she is watching remotely as well. I would like to, we've got a lot of stuff to do tonight, but one of the first things we're going to do is recognize some new administrators. We usually do that a little bit closer to the beginning of the school year, but we're just now getting to it. So we're excited to have some of those new faces with us tonight. So right now I'd like to welcome Dr. Chelsea Watson, Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Kevin Beckner, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, and Dr. Greg Matheson, Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, to introduce our new administrators.
Good evening, President Todd and Vice President Hopper at home, members of the board, Dr. Marty, Mrs. Stover. I'm pleased to introduce our three newest building principals this evening. Erica Niles, principal of Green Trails, David Jones, principal of North High, and Kimberly Cunningham, principal of Ross Elementary School. Erica, will you please join me at the podium? Erica has many rich experiences during her 23 years in education that serve the Green Trails community very well. Prior to Erica joining Parkway, she worked in the Clayton School District. She's taught grades 1 and 3, served as a middle school gifted teacher and social studies teacher, along with ELA. In addition to those, she was a literacy coach. She spent time as a math specialist and an instructional coordinator, where she facilitated many opportunities with teachers, helping them to improve their craft and collaborating with teachers on initiatives and student needs. During the interview process, we received feedback from parents and staff as part of the process. I'm pleased to share just a few of those comments. What did they say about you, Erica? She has great ideas on personalized learning, multiplying leadership, culturally responsive teaching, knowing kids beyond the data, and collective vision. She has a good grasp on curriculum, instruction, and assessment practices. She's passionate and loves kids. She's caring. She's all about the kids. It's clear that she values relationship building and getting to know people. Erica has jumped right in leading Green Trails, and we are glad to have her as part of the Parkway team. Erica, welcome again.
Thank you. I'm so glad that I got to go first. So I want to just say that I am a Parkway kid. I have attended Parkway since kindergarten. I went to Highcroft Ridge. I married my husband, who I met in first grade at Highcroft Ridge. And we grew up and had our own kids, and we were like, we want to be in Parkway. And the reason that we wanted to be in Parkway was because our experience as kids had been so special. And once we started sending our kids there, that was once again reiterated. It has always felt to me as a parent that Parkway prioritizes the right thing, which is our kids and people. So one of the things that was a little bit, like you worry about when you're kind of walking in where your kids go, when you see the behind the scenes, is are all those things true? I worked at an ice cream shop when I was 16, and I would never eat there. But I do have to tell you that I would send my kids here all over again. I feel so incredibly fortunate to find a home that values what I do, which is people. I am so thrilled to be a part of Green Trails. Our vision and mission this year is to make every single person feel as though they belong without having to compromise who they are. And I know that I'll be able to do that as a result of the support of the Parkway School District and the Board of Education. So thank you so much for giving me a place to call home.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, will you please join me? Dave has many rich experiences that serve our Parkway community well. Previously, he served as the head principal of the Lincoln County R3 9th grade center, and before that, he was an assistant principal for Troy Buchanan High School. His building leadership experiences extends more than 12 years. He was an assistant principal at Fulton High School as well for 6 years. He began his career as a health teacher and coordinator of programs for students at risk in 1995. During the interview process, we also received feedback from those who participated. And here are just a few things that they said. I was impressed by his down-to-earth approach. I liked his examples of empowering people to do the work, trusting them, and not micromanaging. The greatest outcome from his interview was his sincere humanity. He's a believer in growth, mistakes, and learning from those mistakes. I'm impressed with the experience and knowledge that Mr. Jones has. He understands the challenges of our students, and he's aware of the students' needs in a changing world. He would be a solid choice to lead North High. After the second question of the interview, I stopped taking notes and mostly listened to what he had to say. I was impressed with his leadership style and felt I could listen to him talk philosophically for quite some time. Davis also jumped right in, and we are so glad that he is part of the Parkway team. Dave.
Thank you, Dr. Watson. Good evening, board. I just want to say that March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, is a great day for me. I've never really celebrated that day, but that was the day Dr. Watson asked me to join the Parkway team, and I think it took me about 1.27 seconds to say yes, I'm in. So, and as I started my transition to Parkway, I was coming in about once a week and just getting to know people, getting to know the system, programs, things like that. And everyone I talked to talked about how special North High is. And I'm 6 weeks in, and they were exactly correct about that. Wouldn't change anything for the world. It's been a great experience. And North High is a very, very special place, and I'm proud to be the leader of that building. So this is my 27th year in education. And I was wondering, why haven't I applied to Parkway 27 years ago so I can grow in the system? So, but very happy, very pleased, very honored to be the leader of Parkway North, and looking forward to doing more great things there. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Dr. Kimberly Cunningham, will you please join me? Kimberly also joins the Parkway community with many experiences that serve our community very well. She was previously the assistant principal at Baldwin Elementary School in the Rockwood School District, where she served for 4 years. Prior to this role, she spent 12 years teaching elementary in Kirkwood and Rockwood. During the interview process, we also had the wonderful opportunity to receive feedback from parents and from staff. And here are a few things that they said. I was impressed by how Kimberly seemed to touch all the important things we are already working on at Ross, such as celebrating diversity, inclusion, collaborating with the community and families, and our students' social emotional learning. Kimberly's administrative background is impressive, but more importantly, the self-awareness of what her strengths and areas of opportunities are as well. I believe she really emphasized the role diversity plays in schools, specifically at Ross. She has a passion for multi-tiered student supports for equity and inclusion. Kimberly's leadership at Ross is valued, and we are certainly glad she joined the Parkway team. Welcome.
Thank you.
Kimberly.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate and I'm so excited to be in the Parkway School District. And so, as Dr. Watson said, I've had many homes in many districts, and I will tell you there isn't any like the Parkway School District. You know, it really is a family feel. And so when I came to this district, You know, I had a little bit of a bumpy road starting with some health things, and I just want to let you know how supportive I have felt, not only from, you know, Dr. Watson and that team, but also the community that I serve, the teachers in the building. They really wrapped their hands around me, and that just goes to show you that I want to be someone that shows them that same support. We talk about taking care of each other and making ourselves and our health and our kids a priority, but that is really true from the Parkway School District. So just from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you all for helping me through this transition. And like she said, diversity is something that's very near and dear to my heart. When I grew up, you know, I was not the ideal student. In fact, I absolutely hated going to school. I thought that I was someone that couldn't do school and that I was just someone that was kind of dumb and didn't get it. And so, you know, my parents love me just like our kids. They send their best kids that they have every day. And my parents sent me every day. But my mom was someone that didn't speak English. And so she couldn't help me. She couldn't support me the way I needed to be supported at that time. And so it really is something that is my charge. It's my passion. And I just want you to know that that is something that Ross believes in. There's a lot of great work that we're doing at Ross Elementary, and hopefully you'll see that coming to fruition as we work hard and put some things in place. So again, feeling very blessed to be here, and thank you so much for having me.
Good evening, President Todd, Vice President Hopper, Dr. Marty, Mrs. Stover, members of the board. I have the privilege of introducing two new team members to the TLA team tonight. The first of which I'll talk about as she comes up, and that's Dr. Kimberly Ragsdale. Dr. Ragsdale joined us from the classroom at Ross Elementary School, where she served for 10 years in the classroom. She began her career at Barrett's Elementary as a first grade teacher. Dr. Ragsdale holds a doctorate in educational leadership from Maryville University, a master's in both early childhood and educational leadership, and a bachelor's in early childhood and elementary education from Maryville University. And my claim to fame is in the early 2000s, having been Kimberly's government teacher at Pattonville High School. So welcome, Dr. Ragsdale.
So yes, all of the credit goes to Dr. Rebecca. It is truly an honor to go from being in the classroom to now being in administration. Again, serving years in kindergarten and now getting to support our very littlest learners and supporting parents as teachers and all of those early intervention programs that we are so blessed to have in Parkway. It truly is an honor to partner with many of the elementaries that support our kiddos once they leave early childhood, as well as, again, supporting our families from the time of birth through the time we send our babies to kindergarten. And so I just thank you for that opportunity, and again, that urgency that the board has put on really that early intervention piece that we have found so essential in supporting our lifelong learners here in Parkway. So thank you for that opportunity to serve that particular community. Thank you.
I had the privilege when I was an assistant principal at Northeast Middle School of having John Deval join our team at that time, a long time ago, and having the opportunity to see Dr. Deval grow into his role as now the middle school coordinator for ELA Social Studies and Reading Intervention. Since 2018, John has served as an instructional coach at Northeast Middle. Prior to that, he served Parkway for 10 years as a middle school ELA and social studies classroom teacher, also at Northeast Middle. Dr. Deval has a doctorate in teacher leadership from Maryville University and a master's in K-12 literacy from the University of Colorado at Boulder. So John, if you'd like to say a few words, step on up.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Beckner. Thank you to the board. As Dr. Beckner said, I've been in Parkway a long time as a teacher, and I was raised in Parkway as a teacher, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. Northeast Middle was an amazing place to come about in my career as an educator. And as I step into this new role, I'm really grateful to be able to serve all of our students in all of our middle schools and to work to implement the really important curriculum that we have here to ensure that we are serving all of our students and reflecting all of our students and creating a space for all of our students. So I'm grateful for the opportunity, as others have said before, and thank you so much.
All right,
Good evening, Mr. Todd, Ms. Hopper, Dr. Marty, esteemed Board of Education, and Ms. Stover. Tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing two members to the Student Services team. First, if Ms. Diane Brown could come up. Diane Brown is our new Director of Health Services. Diane has enjoyed a long career in the health services field as a nurse and as a coordinator for health services in the Ferguson-Florissant District. Diane's passionate about health and safety of our students and staff. Since July, no small task, Diane has done a remarkable job of working with our school nurses, our superintendent's action team, our building leaders, and in order to help us prepare and maintain for a safe return to in-person learning. I look forward to working with Diane for many years to come. Diane?
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for allowing me to join the Parkway family. During my short time here, it has become very evident that we have a very dedicated and hardworking group of nurses and nurse assistants. So I'm very proud to help guide us through this unprecedented time as we all work together to try to promote health and safety for our community. Thank you.
All right, next I would like to introduce Dr. Amy Blumenfeld. Amy has served in the St. Louis region in a myriad of capacities as a teacher, leader, and administrator for the special school district. Previously, before coming to Parkway, Amy was a special education coordinator at Marquette High School in the Rockwood School District. I had the pleasure at my time in that school district to work with Amy for many years and got to see her interact with kids, with families, and with her colleagues and other teachers. Amy is passionate about supporting our students who have special needs, their families, their schools, and our community. She's an advocate for all kids and continues to find ways to ensure their successes now and in the future. Amy is also a Parkway graduate. It is my pleasure to introduce to the board Dr. Amy Blumenfeld.
Thank you, Dr. Matheson. Thank you, board. As he alluded to, I am a Parkway graduate, and as Ms. Erica Niles shared, it's a unique experience to be able to come back after being a student in the district and get to serve in a different capacity. This is truly a remarkable place to work and to be. So I am so lucky and so fortunate to get to work with a very special population of students, of staff members, getting to work with both special school district employees as well as Parkway employees, and ensure that we have the tools and supports in place to make sure every student realizes their potential. So thank you to the Board of Education. Thank you to our executive leadership team for trusting me with this task, and I look forward to being here for many years to come. Thank you.
Once again, thank you all for being here tonight, and welcome to Parkway.
Mr. Todd, can I just want to thank Dr. Watson and the two assistant superintendents. We put a lot of time into selecting our leaders, as you know, and I think this is a special class. I say that every year, but this is a very special class. You know, there's not a big glutton of people that choose some of these roles because they're challenging. And so we take seriously, and it's not like they didn't have competition, because they did have competition, but we want to hire the very best, and we're so fortunate to have people, as you heard tonight, that really want to be in Parkway, have some experience here before, but also come to us new, and we're so grateful to our new leaders. They're coming into a leadership position in a most difficult time, but their positivity and their leadership, the way they're taking on the role is so appreciated. So thank all of you. We appreciate it, and any way we can support you, we want to do that. And I know our board is very grateful for all of you. So thanks. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have some additions, corrections, and/or modifications to the agenda. Those include 7.01, addendum to agenda item 11.05, approval of personnel items, and 7.02, addition of agenda item 11.22, approval of request to sublease on Central Middle's cell tower. Next up, it is at this time that we provide an opportunity for citizen comment in an effort to maintain an open and respectful dialogue with our community. The public comment session is not the appropriate forum for addressing individually identifiable student and/or personnel matters. Therefore, due to privacy laws protecting students and employees, comments about these matters should not include any personally identifiable information about particular students or employees. Members of the public, staff, and students are encouraged to utilize established policies and procedures for offering suggestions or addressing concerns and complaints prior to bringing the issue before the board. Please be mindful that the meetings of the board, including your statements at the podium, are broadcast and that you are responsible for any public comments you make. In lieu of a public statement, you may choose to submit your comments to the board in writing. Also, due to time constraints and the need to complete the primary responsibilities of our meeting agenda, we cannot respond during the meeting, so you'll receive a response from us in writing. We are always available to have an open dialogue outside of our meetings and can be reached by email or phone using the contact information on the Parkway website. Tonight, each speaker will have 3 minutes. I will call on you in order in which you have signed up. And before you begin speaking, please state your name and your relationship or affiliation with Parkway. I will do my best to provide 2 or 3 or 4 people in a row so you know where you're going to fall in the list of speakers, and you can sit along that wall or you can just stay at your seat knowing that you're going to be next. So first off, we're going to start with Nicholas Gott, and following Nicholas will be Avery Adams and Shanisha Allen.
Good evening. Since this is the last meeting prior to decision on Piermont, I will be very frank, because honestly, I'm still having a hard time believing that this decision is even on the board in the first place. This will obviously hurt our kids, obviously hurt our families, obviously hurt our neighborhoods. And yet, this indescribably important decision is being considered by a school board that doesn't respect us enough to meet face to face and hear our concerns. I occupy a very small space as a writer, but my employer does not. And that has fortunately given me access to people I normally would not have access to, including some prominent lawyers that I reached out to, and they were kind enough to give their assessment of the situation. 3 very different people gave the exact same responses. Things that should be setting off major alarm bells. 1, administration and board are trying to do a very big thing, very quietly, and very quickly, in the middle of a pandemic, no less. 2, the administration and board have severely limited their communication with the parents it will be affecting the most. 3, the board seems to be doing only the bare minimum of what should be required due diligence. No social impact studies, no financial impact studies, no studies at all on the long-term consequences of what this proposal would be. It's this lack of due diligence that I find most troubling. Because the more consequences a decision will have, which this decision will have major consequences to hundreds of people, the more important the decision is, the more time you should be taking with it, the more inputs you should be considering. Yet none of that is happening at all. Finally, let me say that I gave particular weight to the advice of one of the people I connected with, because he'd previously spent over a decade serving on his own school board. What he told me was that my board likely wouldn't care about our yard signs, and they wouldn't care about our public statements, no matter how passionate. What he told me is that it would only actually listen once people got loud. Got loud with injunctions, got loud with lawsuits, got loud with recall efforts. I don't want to do any of that. It sounds awful. I have no interest in fighting with the school board. But if you pass a proposal that will directly hurt our family, you are forcing our hand. Thank you. Have a great week.
Okay, next up, I'll remind everyone, if you wish to clap after a speaker, please maintain your hold off your clapping until the rest of the speakers have had a chance to speak, and then if you'd like to applaud for everyone at the end, That would be perfectly fine. So next up, we have Avery Adams.
Hello, I'm Avery Adams, and I am a senior currently at Parkway Central High School. And I've had the privilege of being surrounded by educators my entire life. My mom actually here today is an educator. And I have watched safety training videos and heard about professional development my entire life. I know what Parkway does to provide the greatest professional development in the area. Their 3-on-3 training requires so many hours every 3 years for those that do not know. Teachers are required to learn about technology and many other facets of education, but understanding the importance of diversity and equity is not a required course. While it is offered, the teachers that so badly need it are not attending. Because of this, students are forced to educate their teachers. Students must listen to teachers joke about racism, sexism, transphobia, and so much more than I can fit in this 3-minute speech. My teachers know how to use an EpiPen and save me from a school shooter, but not what Ramadan or Diwali means. Did you know that some of your students feel compelled to ignore their religious holidays because of their teachers' ignorance? Because they assign tests and assignments on their most important days. I come to school to learn and prepare for my future, not to educate Parkway employees about inclusivity and character. I have been having this conversation with you for years, and I have worked with many of you. I'm scared, I'm exhausted, and I'm angry. I don't feel safe anymore. My friends don't feel safe anymore. Our Parkway community is not safe. And I now feel like I can't even speak out against these injustices without fear of getting shot at, as many of you know on Monday for that school shooting threat. Nonetheless, the powerful thing about all of us is we've persisted. I'm a senior, and the changes I asked for today, I will never see. I'm here because I care. I'm here because I want change. You need to implement a mandatory diversity and equity training for all of your staff. You have created an environment in which students are comfortable writing racist things in the bathroom, saying the N-word, and so much more. If you want any kind of change, you need to educate teachers and Parkway staff first, because it is not our job to educate them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, I'll remind you once again, we're not going to have applause in between, or we won't be able to have everyone have 3 minutes. So next up is Shanisha Allen, followed by Kemba Metropolis and Brenda Brown.
Hello, my name is Shanisha Allen. I'm a sophomore at Parkway Central High. I am here to not only talk about the racism that goes on in the schools, but the racism that goes on in the world. I just want to start off by saying that I am scared. I'm scared to go to school, and I'm scared to walk in the hallways. I have to constantly look back and see if someone is going to do something to me, just because of the color of my skin. For someone to come up with a policy to protect people of color and for the board and administrators to say that they just don't have time right now is sickening. All kids want to do is to be able to go to school and learn besides one another. I can't be in a classroom with students and teachers making backhanded comments about me and my person of color friends. The school needs to care about people of color, mental health, and people that have disabilities. The school won't even let my African American brother who has autism at the school. The reason they said when we asked was the fact that he was violent. When I was in the middle schools, the teachers closed and locked the doors of the math wing even when he walked out of the class. My brother is supposed to feel safe. My friends are supposed to feel safe. Right now, I don't even feel safe with the people that I go to school with. Kids need to be able to feel safe within the school walls. I need you to be able to guarantee my safety at Parkway Central High. We don't want to have different races. We want to have one, the human race. We need to come up with some kind of solution so that people of color don't have to constantly walk around with the target on their back in a community they are supposed to feel safe in. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Next up, we have Kemba Metropolis.
Good afternoon, evening now. My name is Kemba Metropolis, so good evening, Mr. Todd, Dr. Marty, and everyone here at the board. And as you know, I'm a teacher at Parkway Central. I've been here for 7 years. And over my time in 7 years, I have met some of the most amazing kids, and it makes me so happy when I get emails from them or I see them at Target. But it's been different lately. It's been very hard when my kids ask me how I'm doing, or I get emails telling me, please don't go to school on Monday, and messages on Facebook from old students that want to warn me of what's going on. This time last year, I would have told you that my students are worried about, let's get COVID-19 shots mandatory for kids, just like we have measles and the mumps and meningitis. Now, I'm here because for the first time in my natural life, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, I'm scared. And I'm scared with my kids. They know that I would go to the mat for them. They know that I would do anything for them. But the mother inside me, because I overmother the kids that don't even belong to me, I can't protect them anymore. They're telling me things to let you know, like, hey, when you send those emails out to parents, could you send those to us too? We're in high school. Those are the schools we go to. They're telling me, please, ask the board, change the 3-and-3 policies for the teachers so that they know more than just the required stuff they do every year, but give them training on equity, not just racial equity, but inclusivity. And they're also asking you to tell the teachers, hey, if you're going to stay in Parkway, you need to learn how to have courageous conversations. We can't just stick our head in the sand anymore. And I want you to know that learning for justice, this whole new issue, is about putting students' humanity first. It's about building relationships. This is how we do it. We build character through relationships. Not just our kids, but our staff too. I'm not going to tell you the things I've been through, but I am going to tell you that I can't sit still anymore. And like Stacey Abrams said, I can't stand the present. I'm not going backward, so we've got to change the future. Please listen to our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Metropolis. Next up is Brenda Brown, followed by Nancy Payeubank and Ellen Rachekov.
Good evening, Board President, and all the members of the board and people that are present here today. I'm Brenda Brown, and I'm a parent of 3 children in this school district. I've written you many letters over the last couple of years. I've attended many meetings at the school on behalf of my children. And I stand here before you. It makes me really sad to hear that there's a teacher at my children's school who does not feel safe. I understand that the kids, our students, don't feel safe. But it's a whole nother level when you have a teacher that is supposed to nurture our children and support our children on a daily basis that comes here and stand before you and make you aware of their concern. Historically, Parkway has been faced with many racial and discriminatory practices. I'm not talking about things I've heard, I'm talking about my experiences as a student in the district who made a very conscious decision to move into the district, to become a taxpayer, because I wanted what the new administrator talked about, her experience and bringing her children. I want my children to have that exact same experience. Unfortunately, the color of our skin shows up long before our experiences do. They show up long before anything that we have to offer. And it's very shameful. So I stand here tonight as a parent, a concerned parent, asking the board for a systematic reform. The time is now. The tipping point last week with the racial slurs, I don't care who did it. I thank the board and I thank the administrators at Parkway Central High School for doing the investigation that yielded the results that they did. No one should have to be subjected to that level of just degradation. It's ridiculous. And so what I will say to the board is that if you are not going to roll up your sleeves and engage our children, engage the parents at the level that these tough conversations need to have, then you will have a vote of zero competence coming from the parents. This is not a threat. This is a promise. So I advise you, things need to change around here. I'm not afraid. I'm upset. And I'm really embarrassed that in 2021, we're still faced with these challenges. And I know that they won't go away because change is bound to happen. I just expect them to be inclusive. I expect the discrimination and the racial practices to be extinguished. I'm not even saying be at a minimum. They need to be extinguished and terminated in this district. And I have heads nodding. I want to see the work happening for our children. I have a senior. She will graduate this year. I want change now.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Next up is Ms. Eubank, followed by Ellen Rachekov and Michelle Fussner.
Good evening. I'm Nancy Payeubank, the student body president of Parkway Central. The environment of my school leaves many students feeling unsafe, and this needs attention. Please listen and help me and my peers. Unfortunately, racism is all around us, even if we don't notice it or if it doesn't affect us individually. For the past 5 years, there has been a racial incident each year. The conversation of acknowledging these incidents needs to be bigger. The first thing you can do is read and approve the student proposed board policy against hate speech. The reason why similar incidents keep occurring in our community is because punishments are not given to the highest degree. I do not mean punishments as in suspensions, but by requiring students who have done the damage to have conversations with those they've hurt to learn from the irreversible mistakes they've made. If you are asking yourself how you can fix this issue, this is step 1. Next, I'm asking you to require a 3-in-3 training on true inclusivity, which addresses training on building empathy and appreciating diversity, body image, religion, and more. Teachers have such an influence on the children they teach, so it should be a priority that they are aware of their impact and are regularly taught how some things can be offensive or triggering. Also, there should be clear information about religious holiday observance and uniform protocol on how to respect students when they are exercising their right to religious freedom. Additionally, many students are asking to be included in the emails from the district that are only sent to parents. Students are just as much, if not more, a part of this community and should be kept in the know. I ask you all to put yourself in the shoes of a student at Parkway Central. How would they feel going to school Thursday morning after the hate speech was written on the bathroom walls? What would they want their principals to do or say about it? How would they expect the Board of Education to respond after this being the 5th racial incident in the past 5 years? Now, imagine not being a white student at Parkway Central. Imagine coming to school in a wheelchair, with a hijab or with a yarmulke. Imagine how uncomfortable you would feel in this skin as a student at Parkway Central. School should be a place of friendship and education. If the Board of Education refuses to make immediate changes, this may be gone forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Eubank. Next up is Ellen Rachekov.
Good evening, board members and administration. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Ellen Rachekov. I'm a resident and property owner within the Piermont Elementary boundary. I've worked for over 20 years as a city planner for cities in Missouri and Illinois. I've seen firsthand through my job, my professional experience, the key role that schools play in communities. They're essential components of neighborhoods. They help build the neighborhood's quality of life and a sense of community for the people who live there. Quality schools attract investment in the areas in which they're located, and they're a huge factor driving people's home buying decisions. The Parkway boundary proposal impacts students and families significantly, not only at Piermont Elementary, but also at Hannah Woods. It impacts the property value since it reduces the attractiveness of our area, and the proposal impacts families in Piermont Elementary who will attend a different high school than their friends that they've made in middle school. It affects Hannah Woods Elementary families who have to choose between sending their kids to South Middle or Southwest Middle if they have children currently in 3rd and 5th grades. Which of their children will be forced to go to a different school than their friends and siblings? The lack of notice about the proposal is surprising, given how important this proposal is. Hannah Woods Elementary is the most diverse grade school in Parkway's system. For many families, English is a second language. What efforts have been made to engage these families, get them a seat at the table, and ensure that they know about the proposal and then they can weigh in on it? Part of my job as a city planner is making sure, and again, the years that I spend is working in city government, is making sure that the projects that we do are transparent, and that if we can't reach people in the traditional ways, we go out to the people and meet them where they are. And I really don't see that this has happened as part of this proposal. I know it's a very difficult thing to do, but I know that it also can be very effective. So instead of approving the proposal, I hope the school board will consider investing in a true and up-to-date facilities plan to consider other options than creating a dysfunctional feeder pattern for Piermont Elementary. And I know this is an additional cost, but I hope that you'll consider, if you're not sure that property owners and taxpayers will support that, that you will respectfully consider putting that sort of thing on the ballot, including any changes that might be made to facilities to make them work better, the existing facilities that you have, making them work better for the students who are there rather than making students change their feeder pattern. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Rachekov. Next up, we have Michelle Fussner, followed by Debbie Donnelly, Sarah Stopke, and Nikki Weinstein.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Fussner, and I am a Parkway parent. Dr. Marty, Mr. Todd, members of the board and administration, Ms. Deval. Thank you for your commitment to Parkway, its students, and the community, especially during this last year and a half. It is this commitment that I want to discuss as it regards the Piermont feeder pattern change. Think of what this proposal will do. It will send children of Piermont from a West Elementary School to a South Middle School and back to a West High School. Can you honestly say that this is what you would want for your child? There are 10 elementary schools between the West and South areas. You are singling out one and putting all Piermont children at a great disadvantage and disregarding their social, emotional, and mental health. Our children are not mere numbers, but human beings who are at a critical time in their life, adolescents navigating middle school and high school. The feeder pattern that is being suggested has been seen before many years ago and then changed. It makes no sense to repeat it. If there truly is a problem, there is a better solution. Together, we should be able to find a solution that, if needed, will be permanent, not a temporary solution that will continue to be revisited again some point in the future and adjusted as populations ebb and flow between West and South. Such actions are detrimental to the children and families of the Piermont community. It is also a gross misuse of time, money, and resources rather than solving it correctly. We must be better stewards of our tax dollars. While we may not like or agree with the proposal, what we want most is to understand the need and the justification for this proposal. We deserve the facts. We want to understand, but we need your help and your cooperation. Has a flow study or consultation been conducted by an outside independent party to examine and recommend the most efficient and effective use of classrooms, halls, stairwells, and all spaces? There has also been brief mention of a 2002 study regarding suggested middle school attendance members. Parkway can do better than relying on data and research that is 20 years old. Much has changed in the field of education. 20 years of due diligence should yield better options and proposals. In addition, the administration has met with Academy parents to listen to their concerns and have provided them a survey. The administration has ignored the large majority of parents a seat at the table. We would like the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with the administration, to ask questions and get answers, and know that we have truly been heard. By working collectively, the three of us can accomplish great things. The Parkway community and the children of Piermont deserve a resolution to this problem that is correct, Not quick or without proper thought, consideration, and planning, but correct. I look forward to the opportunity to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fussner. Next up is Debbie Donnelly.
Good evening. My name's Debbie Donnelly. I'm a Parkway resident, a North graduate, and a member of We Can. As we listen to Mr. Tandy's report today, let us remind ourselves of why school resource officers are in our schools to begin with. And let me thank Dr. Marty, Dr. Matheson, Dr. EJ, and the Board of Education for their leadership. Originally, I came to speak about SROs in our district because Paul Tandy will give a report to the board tonight. I wanted to refocus the board's attention to developing a memorandum of understanding that would uniformly govern all of our districts' SROs, regardless of the police department that the SROs are from. In June, I shared a model MOU with all of the board members. Again, I implore you to institute this continuity in our district, which is larger than the individual officers. Recently, the Hazelwood School District has decided to reallocate funding for SROs to areas to better serve their students. What is the SRO's impact on our students of color versus the district's intention? Are funds better allocated to student services without giving up safety? Our police are still here to protect us and serve us with or without SROs. Which brings me to our district's current reality of racial slurs in 2 of our high schools and the impact on our students. The intention of the students responsible will hopefully be found out during the coming days through our administration, law enforcement, and hopefully restorative practices. As shown by these incidents, whatever the intent of the persons were, the impact on our students, staff, and parents are great. The impact of students' voices expressed in all of Parkway's high schools represents solidarity in addressing racial inequality. I originally wrote continue, but maybe it hasn't started, I don't know. But let's bring all voices, students, parents, staff, administrators, and Board of Education members to engage in courageous conversations to foster relationships to change both hearts and minds. Do not turn away from our responsibility to ensure that all of our students feel safe here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Donnelly. Next up, we have Sarah Stopke. Ms. Stopke, are you with us tonight? Okay. Next up is Nikki Weinstein.
Good evening to everyone. I'm Nikki Weinstein. I am a parent of a Piermont second grader. And I know I've talked to many of you before about my concerns about the change in feeder patterns for the school, and I just wanted to follow up tonight on a few points that we've already had discussion about. And I do feel a little, I'm like, clean up batter or whatever, I'm going to be a little repetitive to what you already heard from some of the other parents tonight, but felt like it was still worthwhile to say. Just have a couple of questions and follow up, like I said, to our conversations. And really my main question is, why won't you meet with us? And I wish I was saying that as a question of, will you please meet with us? But I feel like we've already asked that question, and many parents that I've talked to have already asked that question, and we really haven't gotten an answer. So that's my main point, and I could sit down from there, but you know, we're the people that we're your constituents that got you elected. For the administration, we're your clients and the people that you serve and work with, and we should be partners in our children's education, and we want to be. But talking in a forum like this and you know, that being the main form of communication just doesn't cut it. We want to have a conversation. I know a lot of parents have suggested a town hall meeting. I suggested a facilitated strategic planning type workshop, but we really feel like there are alternatives to what's being proposed by the administration that have not been fully vetted. Which brings me to my next question, actually, which is in one of those conversations that I was fortunate enough to have, and you know, not everybody's comfortable picking up a phone and calling you all, and then you have to see if you call us back or not. But anyway, I got to talk with a lot of you, which I appreciate. And in one of those conversations, we were talking about the possibility of a 6th grade center, and the board member and I were talking about, can we really do something in one part of the district that's so different from another part from the rest of the district? And I was like, well, that's a good question. I don't really know that much about that. So I provided some resources on other areas that had 5th or 6th grade centers because the board member wasn't aware. But then I was really surprised to hear in the last couple of weeks over social media that opening about the K2 McKelvey school, which looks beautiful. But clearly, I think it shows that, yes, our district is very large and has different needs in different areas, and that we can do something in one area that is different than what we do in other areas. So again, so then my question is, so why not a 6th grade center? Because really, as parents, we feel like, and we've had continuing conversations as parents, we feel like all we've heard about that is no, without any further discussion or dialogue or understanding. So those are just a few of the questions I have, and I feel like if we had the opportunity to sit down and really engage in some conversation, it would be really helpful to finding some solutions, because as my other Piermont parents and community members have said, this is not the solution that's good for our families and our kids. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weinstein. All right, thank you all very much. Next up, may I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda for the regular meeting of the Board of Education as scheduled for September 29th, 2021?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. The next regular board meeting will take place on Wednesday, October 13th, 2021, beginning at 7 p.m. at the Parkway Welcome Center. Next up, we have board/superintendent reports. We'll start down there with Matt.
I'll be brief. I will say I am encouraged right now with the COVID numbers. I'm glad we're having kids in person right now. It's been, at least for me, a good start to the year in terms of actually being in schools, going to sporting events, even going to an abbreviated choir concert when their storm came in. But at least we're getting out there, and it sounds like everything went really well with the West High homecoming this weekend too. So I commend the administration and the principals trying to be creative to give back some normalcy to our kids during this time, because it is tough. And then we did, in terms of normalcy too, get back to our committee structure too. For subcommittees, we had our goal 1, teaching, learning, and assessment. It is nice to be back in some of the normal processes again. It's been as we can see, the past few weeks been tough too for the start of the school year. So it is nice to get some normalcy going, and I'm hopeful that we get through some issues that are out there right now, and some challenges. And really for our kids, I'm really hopeful for the spring semester to get back to what is truly a learning and rewarding experience.
Following up on what Matt said about getting back into some more regular and normal activities, a couple of things that I participated in the past couple weeks. I was very honored to be able to help present the trophy in the Mayor's Cup football game between Parkway Central and Parkway West. You might see one of my colleagues laughing right now because he knows that I am just about the least sporty member of this board. And so the idea of me being on that football field presenting a trophy is quite amusing, even to me. But it was a big honor, and it was great to be on the field as the winners celebrated. I also, this was as a parent, but I was also able to attend the college fair that we held. I'm a junior, as you know, I mention my kids all the time. This was a very well-organized event. It was a great way for my son to start his college search, and I was really happy to see the number of Parkway parents who were taking advantage of this event. It was also fun talking to some of the college representatives. As one of the gentlemen told me, he said, we're really all extroverts, and it's been hard for us to not be out here talking to kids. And so they were really excited to be presenting all the possibilities for the future to our Parkway students. And it was a fun event to attend. Some big decisions coming up for those juniors and seniors in our district. I also participated in the Food Pantry Advisory Committee meeting. This is a program in our district that families have really come to rely on. And at our most recent meeting, it's been identified that there are some real financial needs in this program, both immediate and long-term. And I was proud to be part of the team to brainstorm some of those solutions. I would say to our community, watch fairly soon for ways that you can help with this. Because we have some immediate needs when it comes to funding, but I also look forward to being part of the strategic planning that's really going to ensure this program's longevity and stability. As I listen tonight, as a community, we need to hang together. And that's the wrong word to use. That came out so wrong. We need to stick together. And I look forward to working with all community members to heal some of the things that have been going on in this district. I know we can grow together. I know we can do that, and I want to be part of the solution on that. So thank you to everyone who came and spoke, because we need to hear from everybody.
I want to thank everyone who came to speak tonight, and we take what you say very seriously, and we listen very carefully, and hopefully it'll all result in making the best decisions as time goes on as well. And I echo Matt and Pam. You know, we're in a very difficult time. I've been in the district a long time, and we've seen so many things happen for so long, but we are in a critical time, not only in our district, but around our communities, around our nation, and we could be better. We need to make this work. We need to help our students to learn to love and care and respect one another and to cherish one another as fellow human beings. So we have a lot of work to do, but I'm convinced Parkway can do it. Our community, our faculty, administration, our students could come together. And I think the future is great for us because we could make it happen as well. One of the things that Matt and Christy and I attended was Dr. Beckner's TLA meeting. And basically we discussed a curriculum process for board and curriculum coordinator communication. And I won't go into great detail about it, but basically the board approves curriculum frameworks once the research has been done about a curriculum and how it should basically play out. And after the board approves those, the teachers and administrators, coordinators, they work on developing the curriculum. The curriculum then is implemented. And basically, from that point on, as board members, we don't hear anything else about it. We never hear anything else about it. So there's some ideas that Dr. Beckner has and helped allowed us to be kind of giving him feedback on it to allow the board the opportunity to really learn about any of the changes that are made in the curriculum once it's all decided, because it's not a foolproof curriculum, and there are times that changes have to be made or should be made, or it's the proper thing to do. So when changes are made, the process that he was talking about, he proposed, was the board would have an opportunity to really learn what those changes are, and we appreciate that opportunity.
I just want to remind people and myself that we last year had an equity task force that looked at ways that the district could do better on issues of equity. And we presented, I was a member of that task force, as was Dr. Ciartino, along with parents and students and teachers and administrators and community members, et cetera, some people that are here today. We presented a report to the board back in June. The board received that report, and the district has been working diligently on implementing recommendations from that group. That group is reconvening tomorrow, and as I understand it, part of that conversation is how can we go faster and deeper on the recommendations that we came to together. This was an inclusive process. It was a necessary process, and suffice it to say, we need to find all the ways that we can go faster and deeper because our kids deserve it, and our teachers deserve it, and our community deserves it, and it's up to us. So I look forward to being at that meeting tomorrow, and I look forward to continued conversations.
Ordinarily, this is a time where your board members talk about all the events we attended, that sort of thing. And I could tell you about 2 Parkway North football games that I went to, and they were great, but it feels a little hollow given kind of the subject matter that's been on the floor tonight. So rather than that, I just want to keep it brief. And, obviously, based on what we've heard tonight, and, there's a lot going on, and these are complicated times. But I do find it encouraging. Tonight we heard from all sorts of members of the community. We heard from teachers, we heard from parents, we heard from students. And that level of engagement is encouraging. It tells us that, that there's a lot of stakeholders and their interests. There's a lot of stakeholders participating in education, and I think that's important. 2 takeaways for me, though, is one is there's a lot of complex issues raised tonight, and as I listen to some of the speakers, I think to myself, what are they asking us? What can we do? And I think anybody in this room, no matter how you feel about any of the things that we're talking about, would agree that there's not really a whole lot of easy answers to any of this. But I think we're all in it together, and my hope is that we can all work together to find some of the answers, even if they're not easy. And I also think it's important that everyone feel heard. I heard several speakers talk about, boards or administrators, whoever it was, that they don't feel like they're being listened to, they don't think that they're being communicated with, and they don't feel involved in some of the processes that affect their lives. And to me, I hate to hear that, because I'd like to think that we're involving the community at large, but obviously it sounds like we could do better, and I think we should, and we will.
Thank you, Kevin. I will echo the sentiments of many of my fellow board members, specifically Sam and Kevin. We do hear you. We do actively listen, and we do appreciate the level of input that we received tonight from everybody. So thank you for taking the time to be here, taking the time to share thoughts, whether it's email or speaking or calling us, whatever. We do appreciate it. I did want to mention, just in the last few weeks, we held an event to recognize our sports marketing partners. They are a vital part of the fundraising that we do to give back to our sports teams and help fund a lot of the activities that we have for students. We also have a Parkway Alumni Association which meets regularly, and this month we engaged a number of people in some very strategic long-range planning, how we can increase the awareness of students of the Alumni Association in the benefits that the Alumni Association can provide to students. There are many students, probably I would guess the majority of students don't even know that we have an Alumni Association, much less do they know the resources that are available to them, both as students and graduates. So we're working hard to develop that further so that students can realize those benefits. And also wanted to mention a number of us have continued visiting schools, both as part of the beginning of the school year, just seeing how things are going in different schools, but also visiting schools specifically related to the conversation about the feeder pattern into West Middle. It's something that we've been talking about for a number of months. It's something that we shared with the community in the last month or so that we were going to do after school got started and settled down, and we've all had an opportunity to do that, and we all went in with pen and paper and took notes, took pictures. I took pictures. I don't know if anybody else did. But we have been engaged very deeply the last few months, looking at data, looking at the entire situation, not just in the West Middle building, but in other buildings. And we look forward to sharing those notes and experiences at next month's board meeting. And after that, if there's additional information that we feel that we need to obtain, we will do that. We will be asking administrators questions that night, and we look forward to getting a little bit further in this process and deciding what really needs to happen. And that's pretty much all I have.
All right, thank you, Board, Mr. Todd. I just want to take a moment as your superintendent to reflect, as a lot of you have tonight, and I think, as the board mentioned, I thank all of you, many of you, for coming tonight and expressing yourself. And it's difficult to hear some of your comments, but we also respect them and honor them. And I'm going to read my comments. I usually are more prone to talk off the cuff, but I want to make sure I properly echo some of the things that have been on my mind the last week or so. So please bear with me as I read this statement. As superintendent, I take the responsibility to ensure our schools and our environments are safe for all students and staff. I take that responsibility very seriously. I was, like you, hurt by the actions of some students last week. We will not and cannot let this deter us from our mission in Parkway for all students. We must hold anyone accountable, regardless of their race, for inciting divisiveness such as what we witnessed last week. Our discipline policy is very clear. We will not tolerate racism or hate speech of any student, regardless of their race or background, and they will face severe disciplinary consequences. Let me be clear. Racism is wrong, and we will not allow our students or staff to feel unsafe, threatened, or harassed in our schools. While this particular incident at Central was not what it may have seemed to be at first, I have no doubt, and we heard it tonight, that our students and staff of color are experiencing racism in their lives. We saw the hurt and anger of our young people and staff last week, and as a father, a human being, an educator, my heart hurts for them. I wish I could take away the pain. I nor any one person can eliminate hate, racism, personal attacks, unkindness, and anger alone. We all, no matter what the age, have the responsibility to care for others together, to include others in our circle of school, work, and family, and to promote kindness and empathy. As was mentioned, last school year, 65 educators, parents, students, and community members came together as an equity task force to make Parkway and our community that supports us more inclusive and equitable, and to enhance the appreciation and understanding of our diversity, which is very, very important, and to continue to create a caring environment. As was mentioned, this work is only beginning to develop. As was mentioned, a meeting tomorrow night, and we will continue to move forward with those recommendations as fast and as thorough as we can. Our work in character education at all levels helps students develop lifelong skills they will need in school, in their career, college, and in life. And Parkway has long been a leader in this work, including our nationally recognized character education program. Developing strong character in our students is one of the ways we can ensure our students learn, starting kindergarten, that caring for others is expected in our schools and is a lifelong skill. Today, I ask that we all ask ourselves, how can I take personal action to ensure kindness, inclusion, and promote dignity for all? I challenge our board members here tonight, myself, my team of leaders in the district, principals, all educators, and all our staff, as well as our students and our parents and our larger community, to reflect on actions, the steps we can take to move forward together. We need to pull together as a community, not only a school community, but the larger community. I personally will go back to our daily work and remain committed. I will ensure our school leaders and teachers are fully engaged in the work that was called upon tonight. I will not be deterred from our progress to ensure that our practices, our programs, policies are equitable for all. And our character education program work, starting with our youngest learners, is continued and is viewed as an important part of the work we are engaged in. We can do better in taking care of one another here in Parkway. There is no doubt. I call on each of us to not only be the best we can be, but to help others be the best they can be as well. And it takes all of us working together, and together we can be stronger. Again, we are committed, my team, this board, I think our community, to move forward in a way that is truly the Parkway spirit. We're being challenged right now, and we have some hard work ahead, but I know we can do it. But all of us must take responsibility, and we all must work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we'll take a quick recess, and we'll resume the meeting shortly. Everybody back where they're supposed to be? I think so. Let's see, next up on our agenda is our action items. Our consent agenda has been reviewed by the board, so may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented in the September 29th, 2021 board materials.
So moved.
Second.
Is there anything to be pulled to action or closed? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 6-0. Next up, we have an action item, 12.01, the adoption of tax rate for 2021-2022. So we will welcome Ms. Patty Bedborough back to the stage, our Chief Financial Officer, for any questions the board may have.
Excellent. And I am here just in case you have any questions for our audience. If you missed it, we did have our tax rate hearing at 6:30 today, and we did a thorough breakdown of our proposal for our tax rate.
Okay. So I know we didn't have any questions during that hearing, but does anyone have any questions now?
I just think, sorry, but I always feel we need to salute Patty and her department for the wonderful job that they do. I think Parkway's financial status is wonderful. I give Patty and again her team such a pat in the back of applause for all they're doing, because we're a big district. We have a lot of needs, and we also obviously have revenues that are important to us, and how we allocate them are very, very important. But Patty, I just think, and I know the board would echo this, thank you for your ongoing work. And clearly, I think the no questions is people really are very confident and thankful of your leadership.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to serve the district.
Thank you. So with all that said, may I have a motion and a second that the Board of Education adopt the tax rates by category as presented above in the blended tax rate for Parkway School District for 2021-2022 in the amount up to a blended rate of $4.32 10,000ths?
Right.
Am I reading that right? Yes. To be distributed with a special revenue fund of $2.2457, general fund rate of $1.2092, capital projects rate of $0.0583, and debt service fund rate of $0.49. So 49 cents.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please, Nikki.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Schindler?
Yes.
Dr. Sierra-Tino?
Yes.
Mr. Seltzer?
Yes.
Mr. Todd?
Yes, motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have policy review. Imagine.
Yes, I'm going to just introduce, tonight the board has received and been reviewing Section A. For those of you in attendance tonight or by, again, virtually, the district has gone through significant time to review all our policies and are beginning to bring them to the board in sections. So tonight we present Section A, which is Foundation and Basic Commitments, a broad section of policies that really form a support for our district in many ways. One of the things I'd like to do, just for the sake of the board, but also our community, you've heard tonight some of our speakers make reference to a need for policy, especially around diversity and equity. And part of one of the policies in this section is entitled Educational Equity Policy. In a moment, I'm going to ask Dr. Matheson to talk a little bit more about this policy, but what I'd like to just simply say is this is not policy coming tonight, is coming within Section A, and it's not a reaction to the events of last week. It was just a matter of us bringing this together when we had all the policies in Section A completed. And because we're trying to bring these sections together, not separate policies. So this policy is really designed, and Dr. Matheson could talk a little bit about the process, but it's really designed to illustrate Parkway's commitment to all students. And it was truly developed by a number of people and a lot of input. Dr. Matheson brought people together from his own department, from very equity areas, but most importantly, perhaps students had a big voice. Our Students for Progressive Change had a lot of input, and Dr. Matheson and I had the opportunity to meet with them. and they really helped us complete the work, as did our legal counsel, Margaret Hesse. We are proud of this work. I want to indicate that policy is not the silver bullet, but over time we hope to make this policy come alive with the work that we're doing, as was mentioned with our equity task force, to make sure that not only is the commitment existing in policy, but it's in our daily work. So with that, I'd like to have Dr. Matheson not go deeply into this policy, but to give you a little bit of summary and for our community's sake, as this is, again, a very important part of the Section 8 policies.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Marty and Board of Education. Dr. Marty did say, he goes, don't go all the way in deep. I've got notes all over that I could go into some of the language and some of the decisions and some of the pieces of why we are and why and how we've created this policy. But I do want to kind of take a little step back in time here. Through conversations that occurred starting around the spring of 2019, I know that the district had conversations with groups of students throughout the area and throughout the community, as well as parents. And through that, and hearing from our students and staff, what can we do to move things forward? And then so as I came on board working with Dr. EJ and her team, working to say, okay, what are some of the pieces that we can work towards? We talked about the targeted review that we started with in 2019, 2020, and coming up with 9 recommendations for that targeted review as we've all worked towards that as a group, and then from there to the equity task force work. And in that conversation is discussions around what can we do to kind of be forward-thinking in a policy. And we've created a policy called the Educational Equity Policy, AC-J, as Dr. Marty discussed. Really started to get deeply involved with creating this, and again, having some initial conversations with some of the students that were here tonight speaking, in fact, and I want to thank them for their advocacy for students, for their teachers, and for others, as well as pushing us as a district to come up with this policy. So we did meet. I met with Dr. Marty and others back in the fall. It seems like a long time ago, but with COVID, there's quite a bit of gaps in my thought of exactly when, but it was in the fall, I know, as I looked at my notes, of 2020. And we sat down and talked to them, and they came with a proposed policy mixture of some policies from other districts. Now, educational equity policies are not necessarily the norm in many school districts. So this in our area will be and could be one of the first in the area with this type of policy. But we did take a look at some district policies in our area, one being Maplewood, Richmond Heights, as well as others. So this group of students, we had discussions about this. Through the policy procedures, we also got in a lot of our experts, like Dr. Charlotte EJ and her team with the district counselors for Moyenda, Sarah, and Stacy, taking a look at the policies. They really are equity experts within the school district as well. We worked with MSBA. We also worked with our local attorneys as well. And we went through several iterations. I mean, every word and every piece of context matters. And we've created, and in this policy, again, where it originated in the reviews, so this policy went to review for MSBA, like a final review. I didn't mean to mention SAT, Superintendent Actions Team, also taking a look at this, as well as other administrators within the district. So we got students, we've got administrators, we have experts in the area, we have looking at other school districts, having our attorneys also look at it as well. And then we brought that to MSBA for review this past summer. So it's been sitting and making sure that we have that final review, and I'm really happy and excited about this initial step. This is a foundational piece, this policy. Now there's a lot of work to be done, as we heard from our students and we hear from our staff. This isn't the end all be all, but it is a next piece in the steps that we need to take forward to ensure equity for all. From here, we have some work to do after the board reviews this, and if you have questions, I'm able to answer those as well. But we also have work to do to create the guidelines that support this policy. Our goal would be to have those guidelines, or at least a draft of those guidelines, by the end of this school year. The guidelines are where a lot of things, the rubber meets the road, right? It's how we are doing some of these practices and what that looks like. So giving you a little bit of a history there, kind of where we're at today. Again, really excited about the policy itself and the work that we have coming up ahead, as this parallels and ties into the work around the Equity Task Force as well. Dr. Marty?
No, thank you, Dr. Matheson. Again, if the board has any questions in the interlude before the board is asked to approve the Section 8 policies, please, let Dr. Matheson or call Dr. Matheson, myself, or Nikki, and let us know how we can help. But further work ahead in the guidelines, certainly.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Can I ask one question now? Okay. Just, is it fair to characterize it as an equity in all policy? So as I read it, what I'm seeing is that the policy is calling for a review of all other policies looking at how they do or do not advance educational equity for all students.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
That's correct.
And actually, isn't it fair to say some of that is already, you were very thorough in making sure, you and Ms. Hesse, Attorney Hesse, to make sure that already you could deal with some of those other policies potentially, I believe, right? And some of the other sections of our policies.
Correct, right, correct. We want to ensure equity for all, and we want to ensure that our policies and the practices that we have as a school district ensure that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have a report. So I'd like to welcome Paul Tandy, Chief Communication and Emergency Management Officer, and also Nathan Tyson, our Director of Data Management and Research.
Well, good evening, President Todd, members of the board, Dr. Marty, and Ms. Stover. Dr. Tyson and I are really glad to be here tonight to present to you our work over the past few months and our findings and recommendations for the program evaluation for the SRO and the Security Department. Before I begin, I want to say how much I appreciate Dr. Tyson's assistance. It was invaluable. We gathered a lot of data. I know you have the full report as well as all the attachments on the website, and we tried to provide as much information as we could for you. And so we're going to go through the key findings and recommendations tonight. I won't spend a lot of time on the overview because I know we want to get to the data. These are the topics we're going to cover. And as a reminder, these were the main topics we identified back in March that we were going to look at. First, mission, vision, and purpose, student and community connections, safety, training and professional development, and personnel. And then within those main topics, we developed some guiding questions. I won't read them for you verbatim, but here they are. Under student and community connections, you specifically asked us to look at, in addition to how do the various target audiences feel about security, Parkway Security, and our SRO programs, but also to dive into how do students of color. I will say we should have expanded that to say staff, parents, and students of color, because we did ask those questions of all the audiences. And so Dr. Tyson will go into that with you tonight and our findings. Safety, what impact do they have? What research exists? And how do our programs align with best practices? Training and professional development was a key area, and we'll talk about what we found there and a couple of our recommendations on that in terms of what training or PD that we think we need to make sure that we ensure our security personnel and SROs receive, including our own training and PD that we have at the school level that is already existing. And then finally, in personnel, making sure we provide to you information about what are the minimum requirements, how do we provide oversight for both programs, and what is an appropriate and equitable staffing model for these types of programs. As a reminder, this was the timeline. We began the conversation at a work session in March where we identified those previous slides in terms of the key questions. For several months, we did the research. We worked hard to get it done before school got out, so we were working hard on that. And then we spent the summer reviewing the data and developing the main findings. And then just on the 20th, Dr. Tyson and I presented the draft report to the Superintendent's Action Team, and then here we are tonight. These are the survey tools we used and the target audiences that we identified. You can see we did do 3 surveys, which Dr. Tyson will outline for you. We did do 4 focus groups, as you can see. We also did a job shadowing activity because people have asked, well, what exactly does an SRO do? And Dr. Tyson had a great idea. Perhaps we should just do a shadowing activity. And for that, we identified elementary school principals to do that, to have a unique lens because they don't have SROs dedicated in their schools, don't necessarily have a preconceived idea of what they should or shouldn't be doing. And so we asked them to assist us with that job shadowing activity. And Dr. Tyson is now going to come up and he will outline for you the key findings of each of these tools. Dr. Tyson.
All right. Well, it's very good to see all of you, President Todd and Vice President Hopper, members of the board. Dr. Marty, Ms. Stover, thank you for having me. I'm going to go ahead and very quickly, likewise, kind of reciprocate the compliment to Paul Tandy. He did a really good job with the leadership of this program review, and I think we have a lot of great data to share with you. So I'm going to thank you in advance for bearing with me, as we do have a rather comprehensive report, and really I do feel like we want to share some of these details with you because I think it really will help you to get the kind of the big picture of SROs in the Parkway School District. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of start with the focus groups. We're going to start, we did 4 focus groups as Paul mentioned. Principals are going to be first. So what you see on the slide there, those are the guiding questions that we use to help facilitate the focus group. We did all of these using virtual, Zoom meetings, and it ended up working out pretty well, I would have to say. But I'm just going to go ahead and just try to give a kind of a synopsis of each of these questions that we asked the principals. These are all building principals in Parkway. Just kind of a synopsis of each of these, and then we'll move on to the next focus groups. Then we'll talk about the job shadowing activity, kind of what data and understandings of the SRO program we received there. And then we will end by sharing and talking about some of the charts that reflect the survey results of the 3 surveys that we sent out to Parkway stakeholder groups. All right, so here we begin. Principal focus group. So the very first question has to do with impact. What impact do the SROs and security personnel have on safety, students, and staff? So the building principals of the district talked about positive relationships with students and staff, making connections with students, being an effective deterrent of bad behavior, being an immediate first responder in the event of a tragedy, being a comfort to staff, improving the traffic flow at our various campuses, being part of curriculum delivery, especially at the high school level where they might be brought in to help teach some content in a course that's offered, serving as a resource in the face of inappropriate or illegal use of technology and social media, using social media to reach students, serving as a consultant to building administration, and intruder readiness. Also, just a couple of pieces that they mentioned regarding impact, that it would be important to clearly define the impact we want and what steps we need to take to achieve the desired impact. Also, there have been times when maybe an unfamiliar police officer or security member was in a building, not the normal SRO being there. And if there's an unfamiliar sort of badged officer in the school, it can actually serve as a distraction in the school because the students are wondering what's going on, why do we have these officers here that we're not familiar with and we don't normally see them in the school. And then also talking about maybe, and these are the principals again, the SROs might be able to assist, maybe security might be able to assist with these 911 and Go Guardian notifications. So the principals are receiving these notifications, they're wondering if maybe the SROs and the security personnel could assist with that. All right, moving on to the next one. So how do members of the school community view the Parkway SROs and security? Families of students who have been arrested see the SRO as an advocate. Parent meetings that highlight the role of the SRO are well received. There is a level of trust that is based on who the SRO is as a person. Quality and quantity of work comes down to the initiative of each individual SRO. The principals did mention the equity task force, and They said that within the equity task force, there were some wonderings about whether or not that there could be some money that could be allocated to something that might be more impactful, something other than SROs. And then also the community doesn't know about Parkway security and really that it even exists. Moving on to the question next, which is about students of color and how they feel about the SROs at their school, particularly black and brown students. So the building principal said it all depends on the relationships, again, that the SROs build with these students. Talked about the importance of authentic interactions and them being critically important, and that it's important not to try to overdo it. Apparently, at some school or schools, there might have been an attempt, at least at some point, where the SRO is trying to build relationships so desperately with some of the students of color that it's not coming across as authentic. And saw that as a potential concern. Also, talking about, again, how much of it depends on the individual SRO, who they are. We've got to find the right people for these roles. Providing time and a place for people to get to know the SRO. That the SROs need to possess a degree of cultural competency. That they should be included in social justice training. They're really unsure about how much the police departments do when it comes to social justice training and think that it would be good if they could be included in Parkway's social justice training. Talked about sometimes the administrator would go to the classroom, the principals would say the administrator should be the one going to a classroom if there's a discipline issue, and it should not be the SRO. So apparently there has been some confusion in terms of who goes to the classroom if there's in the event of a disciplinary matter. And so again, these are the building principals saying it really needs to be the administrator doing it, not the SRO. If the SRO needs to come, then it can come from the administrator. Using SROs to help students and develop positive relationships, they're not needed for student discipline. Again, these are the principals sounding fairly united when it comes to not needing SROs in terms of student discipline. Again, obviously, there's always the caveat that if the principal decides that it's necessary. So the SRO involvement has to be, or I guess in the past it has been documented on referral forms, and that there have been conversations with SROs as a consequence, and they were just reflecting back on that probably wasn't good practice to have the SRO again so deeply involved in discipline. And again, I think the administrators are thinking let's move away from some of that, if not all of that. Should never call the SRO unless necessary, which we spoke about. And then I guess there also was a time where they would do this automatic arresting of students if there was a fight. Apparently this didn't happen in the far too distant past, but again, just saying, not that it's happening now, but let's not maybe go down that path again. It wasn't wise. The principals talked about needing clear expectations for administrators on how they use SROs. And then they also talked about the need to norm the administrators and teachers with respect to SRO protocols. In other words, it's 2021. How should this work? How can we make this work better? How can we get everyone, all the administrators and all the teachers on the same page regarding SRO protocols? Did talk again about directing traffic and checking doors, but also should be teaching lessons. So I think the principals are looking for maybe is there a way we can have the SROs doing a little bit maybe more meaningful engagement with students rather than just directing traffic, just checking doors. SROs should be someone who knows the kids, who can relate, who has police knowledge, and also someone who can take action when necessary. And the principal who mentioned this said this is a difficult juxtaposition. It's almost like you need all things coming out of this one SRO, and is it difficult to get all of those things in one person? And this particular principal was thinking that it was difficult. Moving on to communication. So principal saying it's inconsistent and infrequent. They do talk about the SRO role is not communicated effectively. They did mention that the first step is to achieve some clarity, then consistently share that out. Administrators don't fully understand the role of the security department other than that's who you call when you need to set the alarm. SROs meet with the PTO to discuss safety, but Parkway security is not part of that conversation. And they did mention also that sometimes emergency alerts from the security office come late. Moving on to sharing expertise with staff. So again, the principal is going back to the lack of clarity around what the role of the SRO is. Talked about can we dedicate time to the SRO when welcoming staff back, but not knowing if the teachers would find that helpful, so wanting to first check with teachers to see what they would find helpful. If the SRO's worldview, one principal said, if the SRO's worldview is about power, then we don't want to hear from them. If it's about support, then yes, please tell us. So philosophically, where the principals are. Moving on to additional training or professional development. Principals think the SRO should be involved in alive and well trauma training, social justice training, equity work, training in the law. In other words, what are the boundaries for an SRO compared to Parkway staff members? Also talking about guiding the SROs and security personnel on how to connect, being present versus being on their phones. Training on social media and how to get fake Instagrams down. I think the principals thought that would be helpful because sometimes they have difficulty with some of the social media infractions or violations of the students, and can we have SROs maybe become more, understand better how those issues can be addressed. Also, how to partner with parents about preventing risky behaviors such as vaping. And the administrators need to learn what they can and can't share with the SRO. So it was almost like principals have some training they need to do, but SROs have some training they need to do, but also principals have some training they could do as well. One of the big things being, what can we and can we not share with the SRO? There was not a lot of this that was coming out now is about like job positions for the SROs, and talking about there really wasn't a lot of interest in one of these SRO positions. There was just one candidate for a recent position. They identified the personality and belief systems that are best for the public schools. They can't teach SROs how to be the right type of person for the job, and they talked about it's the same thing with teachers. You can't get, you can't teach how to be the right type of person, You can teach all of the skills and things like that, but you need to have the right personality traits in the candidates coming in. And then talked about whenever we lose an SRO, we're losing an awful lot of training an investment that we've put into that SRO. Moving on to oversight. Each individual police department sets its own expectations. Some police departments ask for annual feedback and include principals in the hiring process. Principals sometimes don't know who the SRO's supervisor is. Sometimes principals are asked to provide feedback on the SRO, and sometimes they aren't. The way feedback is transferred from principal to SRO supervisor is not always confidential. And then finally, staffing model. Principals thought it's easier to make connections when an SRO is in a building every day. If SROs are spread too thin, then they only show up when there's a problem. And they prefer to have shared SROs for elementary schools and a dedicated SRO at the middle school level. All right, that was the principal focus group. So we're going to move on now to the security department focus group. And I'm going to just advance this. So again, we're using like the guiding questions, but they change a little bit depending on the group that we did the focus group with. So impact here. Now we're talking about security officers in the Parkway School District right now. So we brought a group of, actually I think it was just about the whole department, came together to talk about their roles and their impact and how the community views them. So I think a couple of high level points. First of all, they want to be positive role models. They want to have good attitudes. They're taking their job seriously. They help to improve how staff and community view police and security. They feel like they're well trained and they feel like they're well prepared for an incident. They know that they want to be visible and should be visible. The example they gave was at the vaccine clinic when they were out there helping with traffic and things. They want to be present at major events to lend a helping hand and to make people feel safer. They want to, they mentioned that they do monitor the cameras and that makes an impact. They also said that they're the first responders and the first line of defense in the event of an emergency. They mentioned that parents walk up to them during the games and say, hey, glad you're here, thank you. Also, they are able to respond proactively as well as reactively if need be. Talked a little bit about leadership having a substantial change over the past few years, and that has made Parkway security better. Talked about how they have team meetings that increase their cohesiveness and that they have great working relationships with the SROs. Security officers mentioned the impact is not often recognizable, so they recognize the fact that we're monitoring tip lines, we're monitoring 911 calls, we're checking cameras, we're doing this 24/7 operation, and folks don't see security always, responding to these things. For example, if there's an attempted break-in at a school, folks don't necessarily see that the security officers are responding. Moving on to viewed by members of the community. So again, this idea of out of sight, out of mind. Security officers knew staff members by name, and students saw security engaging with faculty, so they see this as kind of, that's what we want to go for. We want to be out there. We want to be engaging and interacting with the community, the school community, but they do recognize that that's probably an area that they need to grow in. They used to be very reactive, and now they're very proactive. At least this is their perspective. The folks wave at security officers. They reliably respond to all types of calls, getting folks answers to their questions. They're hiring good people who are educated and well-trained. There's major changes to security in a short time, and they're receiving a lot more training now than in the past. There is an emphasis on customer service. One example that they gave is they were called out for a flooded urinal, and the security officer, I guess it was after midnight, security officer didn't want to call facilities and wake someone up and have them come out to take care of it. So the security officer grabbed a mop, grabbed a bucket, cleaned it up, and then they were just able to kind of take care of it. Moving on to communication. Talked a lot about the website is important. It introduces the officers. It gets information out there. And again, though, they said people don't know what they don't know. So I think they do recognize it's hard to really be communicating out with the community the way they would like to. They said it starts with being out there and being visible, exposure, more interactions, public relations. They know this is what they want, but again, I think they're working on it, and I think it's probably easier said than done in a lot of cases. The officer received a call from a school to open a door for a staff member, and the officer offered to bring in the boxes, so they're trying to do more just to be helpful and just good people and kind. They're working to make a good impression, and they are involved and flexible, unsure what the future role will look like. Moving on to sharing expertise with staff. So talked about the website, talked about safety talks, demonstrations, communications, make offerings known, security several years ago, check buildings, and they didn't do much more. Current security officer group is diverse, and they're experienced, and they're trained. So they talked about how this communication really shouldn't be done through email. We need to do it one-on-one with the community. We need to be slowly building rapport. We need to be inviting folks to come to see the new security office over here at the Welcome Center to come see what we do. In terms of additional training, they think crisis intervention team is important. They think they should have training when it comes to mental health crisis. They talked about these Police 1 classes that teach the law and how to be prepared, what to say and what to do. They talked about MAT training and de-escalation techniques, clinical types and role-playing, and they really were also mentioning about there needs to be, there is this thing that they have to go through every year where they're re-qualifying on shooting, using a baton, using handcuffs, and using pepper spray. Police 1 is a post-credit thing that is offered to police officers, training I should say, and role-playing with potential active shooter, they mentioned, that's some additional training. Tabletop activities, like for example, if there's a lost little girl, how do we respond? And then engaging in more training that Parkway Security several years ago did. Moving on to the staffing model, more officers during the daytime is what they would hope for. They did mention one officer for 20 elementary schools isn't enough. They said 4 or 5 more staff would be beneficial. It's difficult to staff a 24/7 operation with just 8 people. Adding staff would help to cover vacation, sick time, etc. The current central location is great. With additional staff, consider grouping by area. And then even with the central location, it still could be 15 minutes to get back up to McKelvey, for example. So it still could take too long to respond. They did talk about also officer safety concerns when they're responding solo to a call. If they're going by themselves and not with a partner, there could be some safety concerns there as well. And then their final thoughts, calls from various school districts wanting to know what we're doing. Parkway is recognized as a leader when it comes to security. Also talked about we're recognized as a leader because of our reunification plans. And then also talking about it might be a good idea to think about moving personnel from the nighttime protecting, they said it's what we have done is we've moved personnel from nighttime protecting property to daytime protecting students, and saw that as a good move forward. All right, moving on to the SRO focus group. So the SROs, this is a group of SROs that got together, and I again kind of led them through. Here's the question. So the SROs are saying it's the same impact that we try to establish when we're out in the communities, when we're not SROs. If we're out just as a beat cop, we want to establish that same type of community, sense of community bonding that we do out in the community with the school community. They talked about establishing that students can trust us and we can help with situations at school or if there's something going on at the bus stop. Talked about students and parents telling us they are happy SROs are present. Parents don't worry so much at work and the kids feel more at home. The SROs said, we're here to help make the school community as safe as it can be. We're not trying to enforce everything that's going on, but we are trying to help teach kids about expectations. Hey, please don't do that. You could get hurt. Others could get hurt. And they mentioned just being present and developing relationships with students and staff makes it safer and a safer place to be. Question about viewing the program. They said they received positive feedback from students and staff. Parents have reached out and mentioned how much kids talk about SROs or something an SRO posted on Instagram. Also talked about directing traffic in the morning and evening. They've gotten to know a lot of the parents just sitting in the car line talking to them. Parents will stop the SRO and they'll talk about the negative media publicity and then they'll go ahead and thank the SRO for the work they do. Developing relationships with the kids as much as possible, though some students try to avoid us. They talked about walking in the halls, running a new group of teachers. They were worried about the defund movement and wondering if that was going to happen here in Parkway. And so the teachers were happy that that did not happen here in Parkway. Staff feeling safer having an SRO outside threat or elevated situations in school. So just talking about how the staff is also feeling safer as a result of the SROs being there. All right, in terms of the students of color, black and brown students that have respect for us learn it at home. The SROs mentioned trying to erase the negative vibe from black and brown students. The SROs took the time to get to know the students who are out in the hallway or not in class. The office is always, so this is one specific SRO, taking the time to get to know the black and brown students. Black and brown students are spending like a lot of time in the SRO's office getting, just because they find this particular officer great to be around. This officer said 90% of the time it's black students who are there. Black students said, we got you, we got your back, nothing will ever happen to you. Now where's your backup gun? Get out of here. So it was kind of a joking thing, they were going back and forth. But the point is good rapport has been developed with this particular SRO and how important that is in the school. Took time to get to know them and they respected that. Tell them they're doing something wrong, but don't hold it against them. The SROs talked about working to develop relationships with black students and white students. One particular SRO talked about the Michael Brown situation and said, at the school there were some African American students who after the Michael Brown situation held their hands up, said, did the hands up, don't shoot. And they did that, and the SRO said, well, at first I just kind of ignored it, and I made light of it, and I didn't really come down on them. But then the SRO said, well, it kept happening, so I had to get the administrator involved. They had some conversations, ended up being pleasant conversations, and some of those students still reach out to that SRO, so it sounded like it had been resolved well. Communication, discuss the role at home at open house with time for questions and answers, social media safety tips to help make a positive public image. They talked about the shop with the cop time around Christmas. They talked about the police department using social media to send out pictures of an SRO out on a nice day interacting with kids. They talked about SROs doing just about anything that's asked of them. During the lockdown, they were delivering items to families. They were collaborating between departments and the school district. There was a lot of this bring to light the behind the scenes items. In terms of sharing expertise with staff, they talked about training videos. They talked about letting teachers know what they can do in their own classrooms to make them safer. Giving a heads up to school staff when a student situation begins to escalate. So there were a couple of situations where in the school, the SRO would be able to tell, okay, what used to be kind of a joking thing that was going on between students, now it's starting to be different. It's starting to escalate. They talked about mentioning it to the administrators, at least a couple of buildings where this happened. Administration, I guess, was busy for whatever reason, and then there ended up being a scuffle between the students. So just the idea that they're there and they can kind of get a heads up to things that maybe are going to turn negative if there's not some sort of an intervention. All right, and then the SRO sometimes, okay, yeah, so moving on, I'm sorry, that I covered. So moving on to additional training. So the SROs are saying we need trauma-informed care training. We need this week-long training where we work on learning about juveniles and how their brain develops and safety and security. These are trainings that they already do. There's a beginner, like a basic course, and then an advanced course. The advanced course actually gets you into like the physical structure of the schools and improving security from inside and outside. Kids in crisis and how to respond, that was a concern. So if we have kids in crisis, and one SRO said, well, there was a student who was in crisis, so I kind of gave the student a bear hug, wrapped the student up, and then sat down on the ground, and it ended up calming down and resolving the situation. But then later, that SRO had been questioned by an SSD counselor, and so that SRO was just saying, well, we need some training so we know what the right response is. Because they don't want to do the wrong thing. They want to do what sort of the correct accepted thing is. And so they did feel like they actually needed training in physical restraint. They talked about the School Safety Academy through MSBA. Moving on to oversight, evaluation, and performance. There is an annual review with the supervisor, which is sometimes constructive and sometimes redundant. Informal meetings with school administration. Hey, how's it going? What should I be showing up to? Have I been doing too much anywhere? There's a difference depending on the municipality. So an example is a sergeant has a short conversation with the principal. Principal sends a letter to the supervisor. Supervisor sends out a questionnaire to student administration that they fill out on the SRO, coupled with the informal meeting of an SRO with administration, making positive entries into the Guardian program. In other words, there were a lot of different things that a lot of different SROs were doing because of the different, they're coming from different municipalities. And then outside of the review, no news is good news is kind of how the SRO supervisor would feel about things. So as long as we're not hearing anything, things are okay. Staffing model. Consensus is that there should be more of an SRO presence at the elementary schools. The elementary principals want SROs in the elementary schools. The elementary schools are a good place for SROs to build relationships with students. It's hard to do, though, when you have them spread across 5 elementary schools. All right, and then our last focus group was the community focus group. So the community focus group, we brought together individuals from the community. So the impact, one of the community members said, you know what, it was great when we had, because Mason Ridge is right there on the highway, it was great when we could have a police car in the parking lot there so that there was a visible presence at the school. The SRO out in front in the mornings and in the afternoons is great. They like the visible presence. Also, the SRO can use that opportunity to talk with students and parents, can make communities stronger. SRO is first and maybe the only interaction with law enforcement that a lot of these students have. It's good to have them woven into the school community in a positive manner. The security is largely invisible, they said, Parkway security, but the SRO is an important community building piece that needs to continue. Model proper interactions with students regardless of differences, and also that relationships SROs build with students and community is good. School safety, Parkway has considered all of these possible security threats, and that was a good thing as well. Viewing of the security and SRO programs. Security has been very accommodating when we need to get into schools weekends for the food pantry. So parents are happy to see the SRO at sporting events and school activities. No one is wondering what they are doing there. So at this point, I kind of said, okay, we're getting a lot of positive information from this group. Is there anyone who wants to push back a little bit? And we did receive some pushback. So yes, the relationships that the officers build are amazing, but there is a concern of possible over-policing black and brown students. They say grades K through 7, we're not really concerned about that, but the interactions at the secondary levels are where there are possible concerns. Parkway does put relationships first. There is a concern over the school-to-prison pipeline. The answer is somewhere in the middle, security but also relationships. So how can we kind of balance those two pieces? Also, the SRO demographic should mirror the student demographic. Also, talking again about over-policing and saying really it's not happening in Parkway, but social media is showing these SRO videos in other districts, and other districts are using the SROs differently, and it's more as a policing force in some of these other districts. So maybe the SRO doesn't need a full uniform was even a recommendation that came up, maybe just a polo, take away some of the stigma of this like militarized police, demonstrating SROs are more a part of the community. All right, so then we started talking about students of color, which that seemed to dovetail in nicely. saying, again, Parkway is a large district. Experiences and impact are different depending on what school you're at. Having officers there and modeling proper behavior is important. But they did mention SROs in other districts handle difficult tasks, handling belligerent students, infractions, etc. And they were also wondering, like, do we want in Parkway to consider more of like a team approach and move SROs around the district? Buildings being safe and hospitable for all kids is a community value, they said. SROs should take the same PD or professional development as a teacher. Equity values of the district, officers use the same philosophy for students in crisis, and the same de-escalation techniques. So in other words, getting the police and the SROs on the same page as Parkway when it comes to a lot of the philosophical pieces. They did mention that if we could have a contract drawn up, that would make this a lot easier, right? We could just kind of draw up this contract, everyone would be on the same page. So did mention that. Again, the uniform being a possible concern, did talk about students of color have had traumatic experiences interacting with law enforcement. Also talking about the food distribution in Parkway, this community member said, when we do the food distribution, it's the most in the north area, then the south, then the central, then the west. And some of the students are in this horrific position with difficult lives, and they've been through a lot of trauma, and sometimes school is the only resource available to them. All right, communication. They said there's really not much communication. Some instances, one example is the SRO at one of the high schools using social media to help students think through driving and applying through credit cards and a lot of things like that. They did mention there's a lack of coordination, probably related to resource allocation and because of different jurisdictions. And this particular community member said it would be great if we could have a police substation in each building. All right, sharing expertise with staff. So lots of expertise in these schools. We have counselors, social workers, et cetera, and everyone is working with kids in trauma. There can't be enough communication, there can't be enough coordination between these staff members, but they were saying the question is one-sided. It should really be more like we need an exchange of expertise that should be going on. SROs should be included in meetings with school staff, but further it so that there can be an exchange of expertise, not so one-sided, not just SRO giving to staff, but back and forth with the expertise. All right, additional training or PD. SRO's job is to be a police officer. That's his training or her training. SRO is not going to have the same training as an educator or a social worker. To expect that the SRO would have the same training is ridiculous. Be aware of what each other knows. Talked about, again, the mirroring of the demographics. SRO and security get training from the community they are serving. Talked about equity and diversity training. Talked about training in social work, including social workers in calls. Talking about more of a triage and community policing. And then also talking about what does day-to-day life look like for the SRO. So how much is dealing with students in trauma and how much is other duties. Important to have at least one trusted adult in the building, and they said a lot of times that trusted adult is in fact the SRO. Moving on to oversight. So giving feedback on the program. Each municipality has their contract and stipulations. There's a services agreement, expectations, wraparound services, but we need to observe oversight. And they feel positively about the district's coordination. They think there's lots of coordination in the district. All right, staffing model. Community members should have SROs at the elementary schools. Relationships are key, and relationships take time, and they start early, so that's why the elementary schools. It's hard for SROs and at the middle schools to get over to the elementary schools. The elementary students are wide open and ready to build relationships. The elementary students have no qualms about accepting food from the food pantry. Students become less willing to accept that food as they get older. And they did talk about the cost of an SRO. The money could be better used for additional social work support or an additional counselor on staff. Good for building relationships, but there may be other needs in the building. Could be a both and. And then final thoughts. Talked about this idea of needing a better awareness of mental health, disability, people of color, different religious beliefs. Talked about how the SRO Parkway could develop its own resources that we use, build this knowledge base and use it. Did talk about Parkway maybe leading a municipal shared services study. This particular community member felt like we were duplicating services and that we're not focused in terms of allocating resources, and maybe a contract with a local university that could help run this study, this shared services study. All right, those are the focus group summaries. Job shadowing. So for job shadowing, there's a couple of components to it. One was we did an interview, and I shouldn't say we did it, because we sent out the elementary principals to go meet with the SRO. They had an interview with the SRO, and then they actually observed what the SRO did. So the very first, and you can kind of see what the interview questions were like, and then also what the observation components were. But I do want to read through just the typical day responses that we received, because again, I do think a lot of people don't really have the sense of what do the SROs actually do on a day in, day out basis, so I think this really covers it pretty well. So the first one, walking the hallways, speaking with students, interacting with staff, lunch duty 2 hours of the day and out at recess, visiting the elementaries once a week. All right, another response, directing traffic, locking exterior doors, checking of the building, going to the office to check email and check in with office staff and administrators, hallways during passing time, setting up tables, supervising lunch shifts, walking the building during the PM, and then reporting back out to the street for dismissal. Another response, hang out at breakfast, support anyone that needs it. Students entering the building safely, check with principals to see if there are any incidents, see if there are any emails or videos that need to be checked. Lunch duty, contact tracing, directing traffic. Another response, every day is different, greeting students, making rounds, monitoring the building, connecting with students and staff, interacting with the kids, hanging in the courtyard to greet students who arrive late, connecting with staff, seeing if there are any concerns, hanging in the parking lot with the station guard to show police presence, sitting in on social studies classes to discuss current events, eating lunch with students, and then this last response, greeting students, traffic duty, possibly investigating discipline, lunch duty, talking with students. Days that stand out for the SROs. The hardest is when a student has to be removed from the home. Another officer said, positive example, trying to build relationships and with reluctant students. Apparently this SRO saw a student in the community, and the student who the officer thought was reluctant to sort of get to know the officer ran up and gave a big hug to the officer. Another day that stood out for one of our SROs, there was a mock trial. The SRO acted as a bailiff, escorted the prisoner. It was fun. They took pictures of us. Another day that stood out, kids walked in. Students didn't feel comfortable talking to anyone. Students needed a trusted adult, and it turned out to be the SRO. What did they like most about being the SRO? Interacting and being around with the students, making a difference, the kids in relationships, visiting classrooms, the students, the relationships he has built has changed his life, helping students and giving guidance to them, getting to know the students, attending activities outside of the school day to support the students. What did they like least about being an SRO? The media portrayal of police, how some students look at the officers. Tough situation when kids make a bad decision that could impact the rest of their lives, seeing students fail, a personal mission statement that one of the SROs mentioned, to create an environment of safety and well-being for students and staff, building a bridge between schools and police departments. The question about who do you interact with most? Students in the hallway and at lunch, administration, grade level principals, the sophomore class, and staff. What situations do you become involved in? Student trauma and counseling, discipline if it's related to fighting and drugs, family situations and personal situations, giving guidance like a surrogate dad, police reports filed from bus incidents. What are the types of interactions with administration? They work closely with administration. Their common expectations. When would it be appropriate for an SRO to step in? They want to be proactive. There's plans and practices for safety. Daily, informally, also meeting formally to plan, and then social interactions. What types of interactions do you have with teachers and staff? They meet with students and staff all day long. Staff give updates on students. There's social interactions. There's greetings and walking the halls. Who do you report to, and what are their expectations? So the SRO said, we report to our supervisors, we report to the building principals, the grade level principals. The expectations, keeping everyone safe, handling lockdowns, traffic control, being part of the school community, If the traffic light isn't working correctly, getting that fixed, kids wandering the halls, and the principal asks the SRO to see what's going on. And then if you could change one thing, what would it be? I would take intruder drills to the next level, 4E training mandated for all staff. If I could change one thing, I would be more involved in staff meetings and feel part of the school. If I could change one thing, I would change the conduct allowed by students. This particular SRO knew about what was going on in Jennings and said, Jennings doesn't allow the types of things that we allow here in Parkway. All right, so moving on to the observations. What were some of the SRO activities? Supervision was the biggest. Engaging students in conversation. Apparently, during one of these observations, the PE teacher reported a suspicious vehicle out in the parking lot, taking pictures on a cell phone. The car left, but they got the make and model and the license plate, so the SRO was going to run the plate. They supervised during passing time. He painted the walls, or the officer painted the walls when the students were virtual. They walked the halls and checked in with the cafeteria staff and with the principal, monitoring the building, phone conversation with the AD, conversation with the station guard, traffic duty, lunch duty, and some assistance investigating discipline depending on the circumstance. Moving on to relationships between the SROs and the broader school community. Seemed like just another staff member. So again, this is the principal observing the SRO, saying that the SRO seemed like just another staff member among all of the staff members there. Not treated any differently than the other staff members, taking pride in the school community. During passing, kids would fist bump him or say hi. All genders and races would do this. There was strong relationships with students and with staff. How did the students of color feel about the SRO? The principal who was making the observation said it was tough to generalize. Some students sought him out and others did not. Again, this is the one about telling the stories about the story about hands up, don't shoot, the courageous conversations that helped. And then also about the strong relationships with the students of color and how they have the SROs back. Impact on safety, presence, being a clear presence at the front entrance, crossing the students on the busy intersection twice a day, securing the building, responding to students who are becoming physical with one another. A presence and the relationships are going a long way, and the SRO is heavily involved in the safety plans at the school. How does the school community view the SRO? As a positive resource inside and outside the school. The families know the officer by name. The officer greets the families by name. He can tell you about them, and he asks specific questions about their interests. All right, so now that brings us to the surveying. So I'm going to go through the surveys. We did 3 of them. One was a student survey, one was a parent survey, and one was a staff member survey. Just going to talk a little bit first about the survey and kind of how things, just in general with the administration, and then go into some detail with some charts that'll help, I think, to show you how folks responded. So first one is the student survey. It was administered in April of 2021 to middle and high school students only. The N there, that's a statistical thing that just means the sample size or the number of individual responses that we received. 3,685. Reason we got a good response on this is because we asked the schools to actually give the students time to complete the survey at school during the day. There were more than 4 questions on the survey, but 4 questions are what I'm going to keep kind of going back to because I think it gets at a lot of what we want to know. But all of the questions and all of the data are in the appendices. So if you go to the appendice, you'll be able to see all of these numbers. The ones I'm highlighting here, though, are just because we don't have like a whole weekend to do this. So once we talk about those 4 questions, then there's going to be an overall response, like how did all of the students respond, and then we're going to do a key comparison, some key comparisons, and then okay. So actually, I'm going to move on then to the first one. So the first one I have here is actually I interact with our SRO. So the reason I wanted to put this up is because I think it makes an important point. Way on the left-hand side, that is rarely or never. In the middle, that is sometimes. And on the far right, that is often or very often. So how often does a student interact with the SRO? More than 3/4 of our students who responded to this said rarely or never do I interact with the SRO. Just about 20% said sometimes I interact with the SRO. And then just a handful proportionally speaking, said I interact with the SRO often or very often, and it was 4%. So I think it makes an interesting point, and it also provides a little bit of context too as we start to go through some of these charts. And part of it is, a lot of it is what is your perspective about having an SRO, not necessarily what have you gotten out of your interactions with the SRO. Okay, so it's more like how the SROs are viewed in a lot of cases. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put this first one up. So the question was, I am happy we have an SRO at school. If you start on the left-hand side, that's strongly disagree. That dark orange is strongly disagree. The yellow is disagree. The gray is neutral, no opinion. The light blue is agree, and the dark blue is strongly agree. So I do want to apologize if some of this doesn't add up to ends up being either more or less just by a little bit than 100%. It's because of rounding error. And also I do want to say, like, if you look at the top bar, that is the proportion of respondents who responded that way. If you look at the bottom, that's the sample size and gives you the actual number of students who responded that way. Part of it's important because, especially when we look at some of the comparisons, some of the sample sizes will be very small, and so you want to know that as you're looking at the results. So for this one here, if you add up the strongly disagree and the disagree, it's about 4%. So I am happy we have an SRO at school. 4% said I strongly disagree or disagree. If you look in the middle, 41% neutral or no opinion on it. And then if you look at the top two categories, agreeing and strongly agreeing, 56%, which is a good majority of students saying that they either agree or strongly agree when asked, I am happy we have an SRO at school. All right, moving on to the next one. This one, the question is, our school SRO treats me fairly. So we do add a dark, if you see the black bar on the far left, that is the not sure. And that was 7%. So 7% of the students are saying our school SRO treats me fairly. 7% said not sure. 42% said neutral, no opinion. So you have like half of the students are not sure, neutral, or no opinion. You do have about half, 49%, saying they agree or strongly agree to that the SRO treats me fairly. And then a tiny percentage disagreeing and strongly disagreeing, just 2%. All right, moving on to the next one. Our school SRO treats all students the same way regardless of individual differences. So it's kind of the same story here. Half agree and strongly agree. Half are either not sure, neutral, or no opinion. And then again, it's just the tiny proportions of about 3% disagreeing or strongly disagreeing with that one. And that one's about treating all students the same way regardless of individual differences. All right, and then the fourth one, and this is always, so it's just going to be those 4 items that we kind of stick to for the purposes of this report. So this one is our school SRO makes me feel. Now the scale is a little bit different here. So on the far left, it's way less safe. Then it's less safe. Then it's neither more safe nor less safe. Then it's more safe. Then it's way more safe. So if you look way on just our school SRO makes me feel way less safe or less safe, it's a tiny percentage of about 2%. The neither more safe nor less safe, 42%. And then the more safe or way more safe is a good majority at about 56%. All right. Now, we are going to move into a comparison. The reason we're making this comparison is because back when he first came up and developed the guiding questions, one of the questions was specifically how do black and brown students feel or what are their perspectives and perceptions about school SRO. So we did want to show by pulling out what our African American students are saying and comparing it to what our white students are saying. Now, all of the races are in the appendices. So if you go to the reports in the appendices, you'll be able to see what the Hispanics say. You'll be able to see what the multiracial, what the Asian, all of it is there. But again, these are just the ones that I wanted to bring out just to make that comparison between African American students and white students. So if you look here, and again, it's still following the same exact pattern, but you can see that there is sort of this really what's happening, if you look at if you look at the white students, and you look at their percentage of agreeing and strongly agreeing, it's at 54%, okay? And the neutral no opinion is 35%. I'm sorry, 34%. 35%. Then if you look over at the African American, you have the agree and strongly agree at 38%, and you have that neutral or no opinion at 58%. So what happens here is you can see that there's more white students agreeing or strongly agreeing, less African American students agreeing or strongly agreeing, and it looks like what happens with some of those African American responses is they go into the neutral or no opinion. But then in terms of the strongly disagree and disagree, they're both at 4%. All right. Moving on to the next one. So the SRO treats me fairly. So again, with the disagreeing and strongly disagreeing, both tiny for white and African American students, it's really kind of the same story again, where with the white students, you don't have as much saying neutral or no opinion. It seems like you get a lot of the agree to strongly agree going into the neutral no opinion for the African American students. And you can kind of see how that looks. All right, and then we're going to move on to, this is the one about all students are treated the same way regardless of differences. Again, the same story. 54% of white students strongly agree. Only less than is 38% of African American students agree or strongly agree. But then when you look at the neutral or no opinion, it's 34% for white, 51% for African American. And then students make me feel, this is the way less safe, neither more safe nor less safe one. Both white and African American are tiny for the way less safe and less safe, just about 2% or 3%. And then with the white students, 61% say more safe or way more safe. Just 41% of African American students saying more safe or way more safe. And again, the same thing happens where it gets kind of kicked into that the middle answer, which is the neither more safe nor less safe. All right, so we're going to move on to the parent survey now. So this was administered in May of 2021. This one went to middle and high school parents, guardians. It also went to the elementary school parent and guardians at the 4 Parkway elementary schools where there is an SRO. The sample size is 1,676, and the survey link was mailed out to our parent and guardians. Okay, so here's the parents now. The item is, I am happy there is an SRO at my child's school. And if you look here, you can see 66% strongly agree, 17% agree. If you add those together, that's 83% of our parents saying that I'm happy there's an SRO at my child's school. That's a strong, strong majority. You have about 10% that are saying neutral, no opinion, and a pretty small percentage of about 6% saying that they either disagree or strongly disagree that there's an SRO at their child's school. SRO treats me fairly. So for the parents, the SRO at my child's school treats me, the parent, fairly. So you can see here we have about 46%, almost half, agreeing or strongly agreeing. 39% are in the middle. If you take the 39% and add that to the not sures of 13%, that's 52%, which is more than half saying not sure or neutral, no opinion. So just, not having the interactions would be the conclusion or the reason why that happened. The disagree and strongly disagree, it's about 1%. All right, SRO treats all students the same way regardless of differences. So again, kind of the same story. We do have 41% on the agree and strongly agree. We have 57% not sure, neutral, or no opinion. So pretty strong majority saying, I don't really know, or I'm not sure, or I'm neutral about it. Don't have an opinion about it. All right, and then this one, SRO makes me feel like my child is way less safe all the way up to way more safe again. So 85% when you add the more safe or way more safe, 85% is what the parents are saying. It's a tiny percentage proportion again in terms of the way less safe or less safe, just about 2%. And then there's 12% there in the middle of neither more safe nor less safe. All right, happy there's an SRO at my child's school. Now here we're going to do with the parents the comparison of white parents to our African American parents. So in this one, we do, if you look at the white, it's 86% are agreeing or strongly agreeing to this. If you look at the African American, it's 69%. Okay, so there's a difference there. Again, I think with this one, not only do we have it, like the percentages are moving into the neutral no opinion, but also you're getting higher percentages here now with parents with the disagree and strongly disagree than we did with the students, which I think is important to mention. So about 13% of African American parents are saying they disagree or strongly disagree. Again, it's not a huge proportion when you look at all of the African American parents responding, but 13% is 13%. All right, moving on then. So this one is the SRO at my child's school treats me fairly. Again, treats me, the parent, fairly. So if you look here, we have 47% on the top two categories, agree or strongly agree, for white parents, and then 32% for African Americans. So obviously, there are differences here again. And again, we have 40% in the middle and then 51% for the African Americans. So 40% white, 51% African Americans in the middle. So it looks like that's kind of where a lot of those responses ended up landing. And that took away from the agree, strongly agree for the African Americans. All right, and then SRO treats all students the same way regardless of differences. So again, these are our parents responding. When you look at the top two categories, it's 42 for white, it's 22 for African Americans. So another fairly hefty difference. If you do look at the not sure, no opinion ones, it's 56 on the white and 73 on the African Americans. So again, we're kind of getting that same story where you end up with the African Americans. You have more either having no opinion or feeling neutral or not sure about it. All right, and then moving on to, this is the way less safe one. So way less safe to way more safe. So it's the parents saying how having an SRO at my child's school makes me feel like my child is way less safe up to way more safe. For the white parents, it was 87% saying more safe or way more safe. For the African American parents, it was 71% saying more safe or way more safe. You do have a little bit of a difference on the lower two categories, 6% for African American, 2% for white. And then again, there was the difference in the middle where 11% white and then up to 24% for African American. All right, moving on to the staff survey. This is the one that with the staff survey, we asked them about the SROs, but then we also asked them about the security department since they have more of an interaction with security and Parkway. The staff survey was administered in May of 2021 to all Parkway staff. We ended up having a response of 725 responses. The survey link was emailed out to all of the staff members. And the survey included these two distinct parts, one asking about the SRO and the other one asking about the Parkway Security Department. But again, it's the same question. So for our staff members about the SRO, I am happy there is an SRO at my school. Way up on the top, 64%, and then 21%. You add those together, it's 85%. Strong majority saying that they're happy. Again, this is the Parkway staff members. And then there were 5% who said they strongly disagreed or disagreed with that. All right, the next one, the SRO at my school treats me, the staff member, fairly. 80%, it's a strong majority saying I agree or strongly agree to that. And then you can kind of see the rest, tiny percent with strongly disagree, just disagree, didn't show up at all. Again, the staff survey was a smaller sample size than what we had with the parents and the students. And then about 18% not sure, neutral, no opinion. SRO treats everyone the same way regardless of differences. So for this one, we have 58 plus 12%, that's 70%
saying they agree or strongly agree. That's a strong majority. Then there is 26%, so about a quarter, that really are not sure, neutral, or no opinion. SRO makes me feel, this is the way less safe to the way more safe one, so tiny percentages on way less safe or less safe. 20% saying neither way, and then almost 80% with saying more safe or way more safe. So almost 80% of the staff overall saying that having an SRO at my school makes me feel more safe or way more safe. All right. So here we go with staff members now, and we're going to go ahead and break up between African American staff members and white staff members. So this is actually with the staff. We ended up getting percentages, like in this case, the staff, 89% of the African American staff said they agreed or strongly agreed, whereas 84% of the white staff said that. So you actually had a higher percentage in this instance of African American staff saying they agreed or strongly agreed that they're happy there's an SRO at the school. Again, I would caution, and again, that's why it's important to look down at the bottom to see what the sample size was, because we don't have lots and lots of African American staff members responding, because we don't have lots and lots of African American staff members in Parkway as teachers especially. All right, so moving on. This one is SRO at my school treats me fairly. So again, we're doing the comparison. 80% are the agree and strongly agree for white, 84% for African American. So again, we're seeing African American having a higher percentage. Again, caution about the small sample size, but it is a similar story. This next one, SRO treats everyone the same way regardless of differences. So with this one, 69% on the top two agree and strongly agree for white, 72% for African Americans. So again, African American, even though it's a small sample size, is a higher proportion responding that they agree or strongly agree with that. And then here's the one about way less safe to way more safe. Having an SRO at my school makes me feel. So 78% of white, more safe or way more safe, 73% of African Americans saying more safe, way more safe. So this is actually one where it is a smaller percentage, but again, it still is, as you can see, a small sample size, so just caution there. And then finally, the staff survey, just the security department focus. And I'm just going to move on. So this is now, I am happy Parkway has a security department. So you can see a strong majority of Parkway staff saying that we're happy Parkway has a security department. As a matter of fact, that's 81% if you add agree and strongly agree together. The next one here is Parkway security officers treat me fairly. We had 55% agreeing or strongly agreeing with that. And then we had 45% not sure, neutral, or no opinion. So almost half saying they really don't know whether that is the case. Next one is security officers treat everyone the same way regardless of differences. Top two categories, 44%. And then taking the not sure and neutral and no opinion is 54%. So just a lot not sure, a lot neutral and no opinion. But there were 44% saying that they agreed to this or strongly agreed to it. And then this one, Parkway security makes me feel this is the way less safe to way more safe. So if you look down on the way less safe, it's just a couple of percentages, which is tiny. But then 38% in the middle saying neither more safe nor less safe. And then the more safe or way more safe is 59%, which is a strong majority, saying Parkway security makes me feel more safe or way more safe. Okay, so this is again where we take we do the comparison with African American to white. So this one is sort of surprising. It's when you add the agree and strongly agree for both of these, it's 81% for both of them. Which is, actually you wish more of the charts would really give this message, because that's what, I think essentially that's what we're going for, right? Is we want everyone we don't want there to be these big differences by group. Okay, so the next one here this one's a little bit different. This is the Parkway security officers treat me fairly. So 53% agree or strongly agree, 69 for white, and then 69% for the African American. But I think a bigger story is just, again, if you look at where the middle values are, right? So you have 31% saying neutral, no opinion for white, and then 21% for the African American. And then also you got to add in the not sure and the neutral and the no opinions. But in this case, you actually have the African American, 69% is more than 53%. So the African Americans on the left-hand side there are actually saying Parkway security officers treat me fairly. That's a higher percentage than what our white respondents were telling us. And then the next one here, we have sort of the same thing again. African Americans agreeing and strongly agreeing to everyone being treated the same way regardless of differences, 58%. If you compare that to the white, which is 42%. So in this case, again, the African Americans were actually getting a higher proportion responding with agree or strongly agree. But again, that's why we have the sample size down at the bottom, so you can see that we're not dealing with large numbers of respondents for African Americans. And then Parkway security makes me feel this is the way less safe to way more safe. And here it's about the same. You have 61% saying more safe or way more safe for African American staff for Parkway security. And then white staff is 59. So 61 to 59, that's pretty close. Sorry. Thank you all for sticking with us. We're almost done. And thanks, Dr. Tyson, for going through all the data. I don't know if we normally go through that much in that much detail, Dr. Marty, but we felt like in this one we wanted to be as comprehensive in the presentation as we could possibly be. There's still some data, that we're not presenting that's in the report that's available online. So based upon all that, we developed some recommendations I'd like to go through with you and then just see what questions you have. First of all, what we've heard is it was pretty clear we need to develop more clear guidelines regarding the roles and responsibilities and expectations of our SROs. So we heard that from a variety of groups. We need to do that. And it might be an MOU. We can figure out what that tool is, but I think that's something we need to do and work with our municipalities to make that happen. It's a little bit of a challenge because we have 4 different ones, including the county, but we can make that work. We do need to have more professional development, and I'm going to talk about for the officers in a moment, but also for our administrators. We believe we need to have PD for them. We do have PD now, but it's more seen as kind of on an as-needed basis. We believe probably we need to have annual training with our administrators because we have a fair amount of turnover, and things change. So we need to have that done annually. To help make sure that everybody is on the same sheet of music in terms of their roles and responsibilities and expectations. And then we need to incorporate that into more of a consistent review process. So as we heard from both the principals and the SROs, it's kind of handled differently depending on the municipality, depending on the school. And we really think it probably needs to be a little more cleaned up than that, and it needs to be more consistent with the expectations. And I think they would all welcome that. We are a little bit concerned with the number of students who said, look, I don't really interact very much with my SRO. At the same time, the SROs, as you heard in the job shadowing, say, I'm out there all the time, I'm talking to the kids. But the kids were kind of like, well, I don't see them or interact with them a whole lot. Is that a problem? I think it probably is, because the SROs will say that's the most important thing in their job is the relationships they develop with the students. And so I think we do need to look at that and talk with the SROs and our principals of what can we do to increase engagement. I know some of the principals who said on the focus group that they invite the SROs and the security officers to their PTO meetings and so forth. They indicated that was very positive. It allowed the community to ask questions, a lot of interaction and dialogue. Those are the kinds of things we probably need to be looking at that we need to do more consistently. In terms of professional development for the officers, and you heard some of the feedback, there are a number of opportunities available, but we think at a minimum that we need to make sure that we have certain PD and that funding is available if that is an issue. So for example, We believe all of our SROs should complete the certification course that's put on by the National Association of SROs, that's developed in consultation with a lot of national education associations. And our SROs currently receive that, but it's like when they get around to it sort of thing. And we believe it ought to be more of a requirement. And if the funding is the issue for that, we need to find and make sure we have the money. With that, typically, it's not the course fee, it's just the travel time to go to wherever it is and to take the course and the per diem. As was mentioned, there is a training called Crisis Intervention Training, CIT, that is post-certified by law enforcement. It's actually developed by the National Alliance for Mental Illness. And from the officers that have gone through it, it's very positively received. It's a lot of de-escalation. It's a lot of equity work. And there's a crisis, the CIT class is 1 week, and then there's also a youth CIT. In talking with officers, they're both good. We think we should make that as a requirement within a certain period of time that we complete either CIT or youth CIT. Finally, we have school-based development that you heard the principals say they think that SROs need to participate in. We already have that language in our agreements, and in some cases we're doing it, and in some cases not. So we need to make sure that that's consistent, and we're identifying exactly what that is and exactly when, and making sure the principals make time to invite them, bring them into the conversation, and if they attend the training, and that everyone supports it. And I think the SROs are eager to do that. I think in some cases you heard in some schools they're really, they're invited to staff meetings, they feel like part of the team, and in others maybe not so much. So this is part of that we need to build that system of culture and get them into the team. Because we have a lot of good PD that they could benefit from. And then finally you heard, on staffing, and you heard that the principals say, I'd like to have elementary SROs, and there's a whole nother conversation there, but I do think that we can provide some additional presence at the elementary schools, particularly at arrival and dismissal times, which are some of the critical times, through our Parkway Security Department. We've been trying to do that, as you mentioned. We've reallocated some resources from the night, so that a lot of times at night, in the middle of the night, we just have a dispatcher. That's all we have on duty. But perhaps we can do more. With 18 elementary schools, it's difficult to really have very much of a presence. But it's one of the things that we continue to hear from our elementary principals that they would like to see. They benefit from it. You heard it from the community. Our Parkway Security indicates they think it's needed. So I think we should look at that of what can we do to provide additional assistance there. Here are some pictures of our SROs. Several of these pictures obviously were pre-COVID because they were not wearing masks. Then the lower right is our security team. A lot of them are here tonight because they actually work just down the hall. A lot of the folks are here. Thank you, gentlemen. And with that, we would welcome and encourage your questions or comments, whatever we can respond to.
Well, first of all, thank you both very much for the detail, and Nathan, you threw a lot of numbers at us, but we appreciate it. We appreciate the scope that you really took the time to dig deep into what we're looking at. I'll let everybody else ask some questions.
I'll start. I'm going to ask that question, but just to reiterate the first recommendation of developing and the consistency amongst all the departments and how they approach the Parkway schools. That's one thing. Being on the committee, I was surprised by the lack of consistency of what the different departments bring, how they're judged, and how we evaluate, and how we get that feedback to the SROs. So kind of gets back to the point with the MOU, we need consistency across all of our schools.
And I think I agree, and I think that's on us. I think we can take the lead on that. My experience with our municipalities is they really want to be good partners, and they want to do a good job for us. St. Louis County is a little different because it's so big and they cover so many school districts, but I think that's on us, and I think we can do that. And I think it was clear that that's a weakness that we've got to clean up. I agree.
Can you talk at all about your perspective on how the recommendations deal with the difference between Black students' parents and white students and parents and their perceptions?
Well, again, while there were differences, I think, and Nathan can talk to the statistical, the statistical difference, but we didn't see anything in there beyond the relationship piece that we need to continue relationships, fostering positive relationships with all kids. We didn't see anything in there that told us that we needed to do something different with certain kids, if that helps. But the relationships piece was one that was a real surprise, because the SROs will say, we're out there working hard to develop those relationships, and then the students were saying, well, not so much. Or kind of middle of the road was kind of the response, yeah.
I'll ask a question. The staff, I'm sorry, so the staff that was part of the focus group, that was separate from the 725 staff members that did the online survey.
So we had a principal focus group, and then we had a community focus group, and then we had...
I'm sorry, principal focus group.
Right,
Okay,
that was separate from the staff survey, right.
So the principal focus group in the community focus, I was disappointed to not get a little bit more information about the security department. It seemed like it was very heavily centered around the SROs. I was wondering if in the job shadowing, if the principals ever job shadowed any of the security department.
We did not do that, but that's certainly something that we can do. And I think you heard, you saw in some of the data, because of the nature of the security department and Parkways, like most places, their job tends to focus on more the physical security component. And so they spend a lot of time, after hours and on weekends and so forth, and not as much time during the day in the buildings. They would love to do that. They would love to be there, but they don't spend as much time. And so the awareness of what they do is lower, which I would have guessed.
Which is what you reported, and I've seen the same thing, and I heard the same thing from staff members and administrators as well, that there's, the security department are kind of the unsung heroes, because they're doing a lot of the same, not quite the same work, but they're providing a lot of the same services, but they're not recognized for it, and they're not as visible, I guess, in the schools. And maybe they don't need to be for the schools that have SROs, but it's just an observation.
Yeah, and I just want to mention that in that community focus group, all of the prompts did include SROs and security. So I think the reason that the focus was on the SROs from the community group was because those are the interactions that they had and know. Whereas again, the security officers, even they admitted that. They said, we really are kind of behind the scenes oftentimes. They do have, as one of their goals, I think moving forward, is customer service, being more visible, being out there, because I think they recognize that would be a good thing. But I think with the community members, they said we really don't, they even said that, we really don't know what security does, we're really not understanding exactly. And that's why, part of it, that's why I know it was long, but going through those focus groups just to give an understanding where the different groups are, but also what the security department's doing, and even what the SROs are doing. We see them all the time, but we don't really know what they're doing throughout the whole day. And I think because of the job shadowing, and if you look in your appendices too, that you'll have a summary of the job shadowing, you can always kind of refer back to that to see, what they said that they did as SROs. But yeah, with the security department, they even said a lot of times people don't know what they don't know. We're behind the scenes. I think they are trying to work on their website and get different pieces of information out that might be helpful and help people to understand more about security, but yeah, so.
Yeah, I can just give you a couple of recent examples. The other night on Sunday night, when we needed to do a check for this potential graffiti at one of the high schools at 10 o'clock at night, the officer went and met the principal, and they went through and looked at every single restroom, every single wall and stall. Tip line, every once in a while we'll get a very emergency tip at 2 in the morning or whenever, or on a Saturday night, and that's security's job to jump on that, and they watch those things, and they do not let that go until they pass it off to the right person to act upon that tip. We're very fortunate to have that sort of a resource here. Very few districts that I know of, public districts around, have that type of a resource. They may have a tip line, but it's not monitored 24/7, and that is the key to a tip line for everybody you talk to. But those are just a couple examples. I can say the last few days we've had officers in the schools because of some of the things going on. The principals have been very appreciative and say they were value added, couldn't just say enough about the work that they do. More often than not, though, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. And I heard Jason Rooks talk about technology the same way. He said, nobody really knows what we're doing behind the scenes until, maybe something happens. But that's kind of like security is. And then it's kind of the nature of it. But we're fortunate to have them, and the resources they provide in my opinion, is value added.
And I'll echo what Matt said about consistency. I made some notes about, you talked about resource allocation by municipality and how there was some disparity there. And we do need to be on the same page with each of these departments with regard to what the SRO's expectations are in each building. I think that's important, and as well as the additional training, the equity training, the mental health training. I think everybody's got to be on the same page.
Yeah, I do too, and I really believe they would welcome that. With the police officers, they always want it to be post-certified, but at the school level, my experience has been if it's a school level development, they're seen as part of the team, so they want to participate in that. But if I'm going to send you somewhere, they'd like for it to be post-certified, which the ones I identified with you are. So I think they and their supervisors would be, very, very supportive of that.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Thank you both very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, we have nothing further. So, may I have a motion motion and a second to adjourn the regular meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you all for attending. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in a few weeks.
Cardinal plus tonight.